BBS, Terrifying yaffe.
Nkuwaniriza ku BBS Terrifying yaffe n'enkobazi okubanga otwegasseko gy'osinzira okubeera ng'otulaba essaawa zino zikonye 5 ez'amakya g'olunaku olwaliro. Ssentongo Frederick Lugonvu yenze gw'oli naye bingi ebiri mu ggwanga erya Uganda, naye mu kaseera kano tugamba nti Uganda limu ku mawanga oboolyawo agabadde gakyali wansi bw'otunuulira ku ntambula ya tekinologiya n'ensi bw'etambula, ekyatuusa n'okulaga nti ensi ku lwaliro yafuuka global village, kyalo kimu nti obeera mu ggwanga erya Uganda n'oyogera n'omuntu ali mu mawanga ag'ebweru, ali mu America, n'essaawa nga zaawukana nga ne layini kwe muli zaawukana, ensi ekyuse. Naye Uganda egenda tambula etyo okutuuka weeyina okubeera n'amawanga amalala, kubanga buli kaseera tulinga abagoberera amakampuni ag'enjawulo aga tekinologiya agakoze ogwago okwongera okulaba nga Uganda ebaako weetuuka newankubadde nga oboolyawo obwetaavu bukyali bungi, naddala mu nsonga ez'enjawulo bwe tulina okutukozesa ebyuma bikalimagezi. Bangi tulina tekinologiya tumulaba wano, ebintu bya internet tubiraba na buli kimu, naye ekibuuzo ekiriwo nti tubikozesangawo birina okukozesebwa. Ye ekibuuzo ekirala, bwe gaba nga amawanga amalala abantu bangi basobodde okugaggawalira mu bintu bye tulaba wano nga biringa eby'omuzannyo, bwe gaba nga amawanga ag'ebweru abamu ku basajja abasinga obugagga bali ku Facebook, abamu ku basajja abasinga obugagga bali ku YouTube, abamu ku basajja abasinga obugagga bali ku Twitter, abamu ku basajja abasinga obugagga bali ku TikTok. Tekinologiya ono bannayuganda bagenda kumwembracinga batya, bagenda kumuyingiza batya mu bwongo bwabwe, baleme kumulaba nga kyakuzanyirako, wabula batandika okumulaba ng'ebyenfuna ebisobola okukyusa Uganda eyaleero n'ey'enkya. Olunaku olwaliro abakugu era abakulu basinkanye ku Mystery Hotel wano mu Kampala okwongera okuba ttooki n'okwetegereza butya bwe bayinza okuba nga bassaawo enkyukakyuka mu tekinologiya wa Uganda, bannayuganda okwongera okubamanyisa n'okubaagaza n'okubalagira ddala ekitangaala nti tokyasobola kuwangaalira mu nsi ng'oli mu busibe oba obutatambulira ku nkola eya .com. Ku lwaliro okusoomozebwa kungi era bingi by'otunuulira buli omu naga nti tulina ffe bye baatuwa twabikozesa ku nkola ndala, bye baatuwa nga bw'olaba Facebook wano e Uganda abantu bangi, amakampuni mangi agalangira ku social media, naye ekibuuzo ekiriwo nti gwe Facebook gy'olina ogikozesa otya. Abantu bangi abayigidde ebintu bikisuza obulamu bwabwe ku YouTube, naye gwe ku YouTube w'ogendayo okebera baani, bintu ki by'olaba, bintu ki by'owuliriza. Abantu bangi bali ku Twitter nga bakyusiza obulamu bwabwe n'obulamu bw'abalala, naye gwe bw'ogenda ku Twitter abantu ki b'ofollowinga. Abantu bangi bali ku TikTok balanga ebintu byabwe, naye gwe ku TikTok okolerako ki okujjako okukyusa face. Ebintu bino bitulina okutunuulira. Omwoleso gw'amakampuni aga tekinologiya ogutegekeddwa ku Mystery Hotel era nga bagenda kutunuulira butya basobola okuba nga bongera amagezi ku bannayuganda n'okubamanyisa ekintu kino nga birimu n'entambuza ya ssente. Kati abantu tebakyatambula, ogenda mu America, ogenda China, ogenda Dubai, ogenda kusuubula n'ogenda n'omutuutuuli gw'ensimbi, bigenze bikyuka. Wabula wakyaliwo abo abakyali mu mbeera eyo nga balowooza bwe bulamu bwe batambuliramu. Njagala okuba nga maaso awo nja kwegatta ku mugange Morris Mukiibi ali ku Mystery. Yes, Morris Mukiibi, great. Bannayuganda mbadde wano nga njogera ku mbeera gye tuwangaaliramu nga bannayuganda. Tekinologiya tulinga abatandise okubeera naye enkozesa yaffe ekyali wansi, tutunulira bintu birala nti tuli mu ango ndala kyokka nga waliwo abakifunamu. Sooka obuze ku munnayuganda otunyonyole n'enteekateeka bw'etambula ey'omwoleso guno ogw'amakampuni aga tekinologiya. Kigenda kutambula kitya, kigenda kumala nnaku mmeka, ye baani abakiri wakati?
Wow, webale nnyo muganda wange Frederick Lugonvu, nga bw'onyonyodde ensi ekula olwa tekinologiya, ensi ekula olw'engeri gyefuuseemu global village. Bannaffe bangi abakulaakulanye mu nsonga zino eza tekinologiya ate bagenda maaso oba oliawo n'okubanga butereevu mu byobulamu, basobola n'okulongoosa omuntu nga bakozesa tekinologiya. Bwe kituuka mu byensimbi ate era nga bw'onyonyodde balina tekinologiya mungi gwe bakozesa. Omuntu akyagenda mu banka oba oliawo n'agendayo physically naye asobola okusigala nga addukanya ebyensimbi ze. Olunaku olwaleero olwaleero tuli wano ku Mestil Hotel ng'enteekateeka eriwo ey'abannaffe aba HiPipo abategese omuwoleso gw'oyinza okuyita nti gutunuulidde enteekateeka eno ey'ebyensimbi era nga baguyise FinTech gwali eyo oyinza okuba olina akasimuko ngero kakozesa okusindika ensimbi okusindikira mukaddewo ali mu kitundu ekirala oyinza okuba oli awo ng'osobola butereevu ogenda ku banka yo n'ojjayo yemu ng'oyinza n'okukola ebintu ebirala. Kakati mu ggwanga lyettu Uganda waliwo okusoomozebwa okuliwo oba oli awo naddala mu nteekateeka eno ey'ebyensimbi nabwe kityo bannaffe bano aba HiPipo ne bakola enteekateeka ey'okulaba nti basobola okutunuulira amakampani 40 era babadde bakola enteekateeka gye bayise 40 days 40 FinTech nga baprofiringa buli lunaku kampani emu eri mu nteekateeka eno ey'ebyensimbi ate olunaku olwaleero zonna 40 ne bazireeta wamu okusobola okulaba nti zongera okulaga bannayuganda biki bye zikola enteekateeka yazo eri etya naddala okulaakulanya enteekateeka eno ey'ebyensimbi. Waliwo okusoomozebwa kungi naddala bw'otunuulira eggwanga lyaffe Uganda mu nsonga eya intaneti kubanga byonna tekinologiya yatambulira ku intaneti wa buseere ate mu ngeri y'emu oba oli awo nayo kiyinza okubeera ekizimu ku byo. So njagala okutwalako ku midaala egy'enjawulo gye wano olunaku olwaleero batunnyonnyole enteekateeka yaabwe ey'enjawulo gye balina naddala ebikwatagana n'ensonga eno ya tekinologiya. Bangi babadde bayiiya buli kaseera naye mukulu gonvu njagala mbuuze ekibuuzo kino nti gwe obadde okola mu nteekateeka zino ez'okusindika ensimbi olina okusoomozebwa okw'enjawulo kw'obadde osinkana waliwo okusoomozebwa bangi kwe boogeddeko nga okwokuba nti osindika ensimbi naye mwana wattu singa ziwaba ne zigenda ew'omuntu omulala ofuna akaseera akazibu ensimbi ezo okuzirikavalinga bye bimu bye tugenda okuba nga tutunuulira olunaku olwaleero challenges eziri mu nteekateeka eno ate oba oli awo nakiki kiyinza okuba nga kikolebwa okusobola okutereeza embeera eno. Mukulu gonvu gy'oli eyo simanyi owali okirowoozezaako nti osobola okuraninga akawunti yo nga togenze na mu bank n'ogiggulawo ate n'osobola n'okugimaneginga butereevu. Simanyi oba okubaganyamu ebirowoozo omuntu ali ekyamaganda eri ewammwe mu lwengo okusobola okuba nga atambuza ebyensimbi bye ng'akozesa ssimu okusoomozebwa kwayinza okuba nga abeera nako bye bimu bye tulina okuba nga tutunulira olunaku olwaleero. Mukulu gonvu ngenda eri abakulu ab'enjawulo abalina emidaala wano abazze okwolesa ebintu bye bakola era njagala okkirize nsobole okwogerako nabo oba oyinza n'okumpa ekibuuzo n'ekibabuuza mu nteekateeka eno.
Yes, Muganda Morris Mukibi ensonga ozirambise bulungi era ozirungamiza bulungi. Ebibuuzo by'olina bye bibuuzo bannayuganda bye balina. Oyogedde ku nsonga ya networking ekyalimbe mu ggwanga erya Uganda n'oyogera ku nsonga nti singa ensimbi zigende wala okuzirikavalinga kibeera kitya ne ignorance eri mu bantu ku nkola ya tekinologiya yono bakyali wansi. N'ekirala kye tutunuulira bwe bufere obususse mu nkola eno eya okutambuza ensimbi ku mitimbagano obufere bungi eri bannayuganda ate era mu nkola yemu n'abeerimbika mu makampuni ago oba n'abeerimbika mu bakola omulimu ogwo nabo bangi ekyongedde okwonona oba oliawo enkola yonaga nti waakiri ngenda ensimbi era yini mu bank naye nga ntegedde nti sente nzeeteereddeyo nga ne kamera zinkutte. Challenges zikyali bagenda zisalira magezi ki okulaba nga bazimalawo oba oliawo.
Weewaawo mukulu gonvu kantandikirawo wennyini ku kibuuzo kyompadde. Wano wendi nyinawo mukadde wange ava mu kitongole ekya UGMAT era nga bwe bamu ku bakola mu nteekateeka zino eza FinTech. Kansooke obuuze ku balabi ba telefayina eyaffe oli butereevu.
Nsanyusa okubeera nammwe aba telefayina channel eno ya telefayina tujagala nnyo kubanga ne mu kiseera ekya COVID yakola engeri y'okusigala nga abaana basoma ng'eweereza okuyamba abaana okusoma ku telefayina. Kakati ffe mu FinTech tusooka ne tugamba nti abantu balina solutions ze baagala naye babulwako ebintu kimu oba bibiri. Ekisooka bayinza okuba nga tebalina ffe be tuyita ba developer so kati bw'ojja ewaffe ngo oyina solution gy'oyagala okuteeka ku mutimbagano kyetusooka okukakasa nti tusobola okukikuzimbira kyekisooka
muyamba mu kudevelopinga
kyekisooka
ekibuuzo ekikulu omunambo wa Yugimat munauganda alina okusoomozebwa kw'amaanyi era ku kintu ekiriwo ekyobufere nti bantu bangi balina platforms zebakozesa okusindika ssente oba okurisivinga ssente naye ng'abafere balina engeri gye bayingiramu mu systems ezo ate ne babba ensimbi oba oliawo era ne babako engeri gye beerimbika mu kifaananyi ekyo mmwe abadevelopinga mulina nteekateeka ky'okusobola okumenyawo ekkuba eri abafere mwe bayita
kaakati kiringa bw'olaba ennyumba ng'ozimbye ennyumba bw'ogizimba nga togitaddeeko kisenge eyo step number 1. Step number 2 bw'ogizimba n'oteekako ekisenge nga totaddeko sekanyolya kyekyokubiri. Kati bw'oteekako sekanyolya oli naye ate asobola okukola ki okubako ekutiya era n'abuuka kati oyongerako amasannyalaze kati bwabuuka ate okola kye bayita radar oba motion detection ne alarm system noteekako ne kamera kakati kisinziira gwe oyagala ku protecting otya kakati ekisembayo ennyumba yo ogizimbye mu kirasha oba ogizimbye kolore
mu bufunze nga muzimba platforms zino eri abantu abazeetaaga mukozesa obukugu okuteekako protocols oba obukuumi n'obwenjawulo nabeera nga ali sekiwa
kati ekyo ekisooka ekyokubiri tugamba nti abantu bangi kati olaba covid ekisooka omagamba covid atambulira ku ssente ndabye nga microphone ogirwanira covid tugamba sooke tugyewo kashi tufuuke digital
omuntu ayagala okubasinkana mu bwangu kubanga twagala okugenda nekwasabala omuntu ayagala okubasinkana abasangawa era kiyinza okuba sente meka omudevelopingawo ka application
kati ka application akatono nyenyinya akasembayo akatono nga otaddemu ebyo ebintu byengambye bya security tuli million nga 3 naye kakati tulina solution gye bayita schools.co.ug because of covid kyamasomero
era
mulimu okusoma
schools.co.ug
era twagala tujje tukwatagane nammwe terefayina tusobole okusomesa naye mu bwangu
omukulu agezaako okutulaga engeri gy'oyinza okugendako ku schools.com okusobola okulaba ate engeri gy'ayinza okutereezaamu ogwayagala okuba nti weegetta butereevu kufuna ebyo ensoma ate oba osobola okukozesa enteekateeka eno butereevu n'oba nga osobola okusomesa omwana wo ng'okozesa tekinologiya weewaawo mukama wange yes weewaawo mukulu tweyanza nnyo tweyanzeege mulabbi wa terefayini yaffe bakulu bano osobola okubalaba bulungi nnyo mu nteekateeka eyo tukyalina emidaala emirala nga 9 naye butereevu njagala ate nkusooka enkutwale butereevu ku pano yaffe eri ku nteekateeka eno abanafe aba HiPipo abakoze enteekateeka ya FinTech Landscape Exhibition njagala butereevu ate tugende tusobole okulaba butereevu embeera eyo nga bwetambula tujja kwongera okuwa ebirala bingi tova ku terefayini yaffe ketugende butereevu ate ku pano nga batuwa okwogera okwenjawulo ku nsonga ezo.
Technology has also allowed the evolution of FinTech. So you don't only run your financial life on all the platforms that are powered by the banks as it used to be. There's now other players in the form of FinTechs, in the form of network operators. And the question about interoperability is, how do we bring all of this together so that we can, if you like, remove the friction that is there when you need to do a transaction that's across the different players. If you have got money, as an example, on your mobile network operator, what does it take for you to land that onto your bank account or to land the same to a beneficiary across another part of the globe? What does it take? At the moment, many of you would know, you might have to do, say, a number of steps if you're to send money abroad, for example, you need to go draw the money in cash, find a remittance player somewhere who you then use to send that money, or you might need to draw money from your mobile money wallet, go end up in a bank, and then send that instruction as a SWIFT instruction. You don't get to be advised immediately in some of the cases that the money has been received on the other side, because it does take a while because of the platforms that we're having, being traditional in nature. So that's the kind of environment that we're living in at the moment, and saying, okay, if we had all the platforms that are empowering this global ecosystem come together, what would it look like? And the benefits to that are enormous. You get to enable real-time payments. You get to shorten the journey of having to transact anywhere, anytime. And of course, you then quicken the speed at which business is being done, and generally improve the quality of lives that people are living.
Thank you.
That is what I would say at this stage.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, John Mark, tell us with layman examples, what do you mean when you say financial capability?
Thank you, Nicholas, for that question. When we talk financial interoperability, we need to be reminded that this word interoperability is coming in because we are trying to drive financial inclusion. So the bigger topic is financial inclusion, under which we find the requirement for interoperability. So we can draw back and ask ourselves, why have we been so obsessed about financial inclusion? We've been so obsessed about financial inclusion because we came to the realization that for us to achieve sustainable development goals, no poverty, no hunger, economic opportunity for everyone, we need people who have transactional accounts, accounts that are with formal financial institutions. Now, in this case, formal financial institutions include banks, mobile money operators, and different other FinTech players who are currently regulated by the central bank, like in Uganda. Now, while we came to the realization that we need people to have these accounts, the question was, how are these accounts usable? If I need to move money between my account, say in Bank X, Stanbic Bank, to MTN, what is the kind of hurdle that I need to go through? If I need to move money between MTN and Airtel, what is the kind of hurdle I need to go through? So there was a realization that while people got accounts, there was limitations in usage because the different players were not interconnected. So for someone to move money between, say, a bank and a telecom, or a telecom and another telecom, they needed to go through a heavy exercise of providing papers, documentation for that transaction to happen. So fast forward, we are looking at interoperability as a means whereby we can have all the ecosystem financial players connected together, and then we can have transfer of funds between the operators in a seamless, real-time way. We could be privy of knowing that interoperability is not just about the transfer of funds, as me transferring funds to a friend. It includes more than that. It can be merchant payments. You need to be able to go to a merchant store somewhere in your neighborhood. It could be a supermarket. You need to go there, whether you have an account with MTN, an account with Stanbic, an account with another operator. You need to go there with the comfort that any account that you hold can be used to make payment. So this merchant in this case can accept your payment from anywhere. So that is a level of interoperability that we need to be at. We could also be in the know that there are what we call open loop payments. Things like Visa and MasterCard have been before us. Of course, they are more advanced in the West, but these are examples of where interoperability has gone to scale. Now, in our case, in Uganda and Africa, we're looking at interoperability not just in the light of Visa and MasterCard. We're looking at interoperability between all ecosystem players, all banks, all mobile money operators, all FinTechs. How do we connect and be able to make transactions in real time, seamlessly, secure for everyone? Thank you.
Thank you. Now that we know what financial interoperability is, I need to speak to Stefan. Knowing that MTN Mobile Money Uganda Limited is one of the biggest players in the digital financial service systems in Uganda, how then do we pursue the idea of financial interoperability? Maybe to rephrase the question, how is MTN Mobile Money Uganda Limited making sure that when you send off mobile money, I receive on Stanbic, when you send off mobile money MTN, I receive on Airtel Money? Stefan.
Thank you very much, Nicholas, and I think it's good morning once again. I agree with what the previous speakers, John, Paul, have said. I think, before I answer your question, broadly, payments are a foundational service. And the banks for hundreds of years have evolved payments. They even have, payment standards, real-time gross settlement, for both international and domestic payments. So the banks have developed that for many years. And as Paul mentioned, due to technology and all that, the FinTechs came in. And we usually call it around the edge, probing, resolving things on behalf of customers. And as John said, it's about the customer. The whole reason we do all these things is because you're solving for a problem that people face every day. Every day people face problems. So when you start talking of things being real-time, things being secure, convenient, safe, you're answering to human requirements. So when it comes to interoperability, and I really have to delve a little bit here. Usually when businesses start out with a new category, every business kind of designs for itself. So you have what you call closed systems. So you have MTN Momo, you have Airtel Money, you have all sorts of other systems. Go back to any industry, even telephony, mobile telephony. Interconnect came up many years later. Roaming, which is even interconnecting beyond your borders, had to be, it was a standard that was developed by GSMA many, many years later. Okay? So there's an evolution of these things. And now you then get the new, what we call digital nomads. New organizations, the OTTs, who from day one do not think about closed systems. For them, it's just open. The Googles of this world, the Amazons. So within that context, you then realize that there has to be a balance somewhere. And that balance, especially when you're looking at the reason we do business, which is the customers, the small businesses, the big businesses. Interoperability then, yes, John Mark mentioned, it's around financial inclusion, absolutely. But it's also about bringing power and control back to the customer, back to that business. Because once there's interoperability, they then have more control over their decisions, they have choice, and they can express themselves in so many ways. So like John mentioned, with one wallet, I know I will go somewhere and I will be able to pay whether it's another merchant wallet, for instance. So interoperability is at a number of levels. Today, most basically...
Maybe, sorry for interjecting. Yeah. I will request you to open the microphone. Maybe
P2P. There's that was, I think, first level of interoperability between, for the P2P level, where you can actually send money off MTN to Airtel, Airtel to MTN. Okay? Then there's the banks. The bank the bank integrations from your bank accounts into your mobile wallet and vice versa. And very soon, there's going to be a level of interoperability at a merchant level. Very soon. Merchant level. And this could be domestic, or it could even be regional. So, for instance, somebody on M-Pesa service can actually, tourists come into Uganda, and they would probably be able to do a transaction, maybe in a supermarket or a pharmacy, using the M-Pesa wallet to do a Momo Pay transaction. So this is about solving for people. So at the broad end of things, interoperability is about solving for people. But at a much broader level, which is societal level, even the government and regulators would be interested in interoperability because it's about seamlessness. It's about giving options. Open systems are really more engineering of innovation than growth.
Thank you. Mr. Tanori says that it's always about the people, the customers. Whatever we are doing is supposed to serve customers. If it doesn't serve customers, we're not doing anything. I don't know that gentleman, before you have said everything that needs to be in place. As a player who has been around for 16 years, I need to know from you, is there proper regulation to ensure that financial interoperability happens? One. Then two, are players, MTN, Airtel, Starkey, Pegasus, open to the idea of interoperability, or they still want to operate in silos? And lastly, it is one to three. If all those are not existing, what needs to happen for financial interoperability to be seamless and continuous in time anyway?
Okay, those are very, very interesting questions, and let me try and see if I can remember the order. Firstly, okay, those are very, very interesting questions, and let me try and see if I can remember the order. Firstly, is there an enabling framework, a legal framework or legislation, as you said, to enable interoperability? Now, one of the tenets of interoperability, remember, interoperability really is about porting services from one platform to another. For that to happen, there's got to be standards that exist between these two systems. And when I say porting of services from one platform to another, I really mean that the two systems should be able to exchange information. And if system A is initiating a transaction, and let's say system A here, I'm talking about MTN Mobile Money, is initiating a request to Airtel Money, which is system B, it does that by transmitting information to system B, and system B should be able to trust that instruction from system A and go ahead to process it. So it's really about the exchange of information. That's what interoperability is at a very technical level. Now, for that to happen, there's got to be a standard. What's the standard by which these two systems communicate? So, in terms of legislation, I think there's already been some sort of effort to do that. The first one was, I think, the Data Protection and Privacy Act by NITA. And what that did is it forces everyone that holds data to follow a certain standard. Those of you who are not familiar with that Data Protection and Security Act, kindly familiarize yourself with it, but it's binding. And if you know that for your organization you've put that into practice, then I can trust the information from your system. I can also trust the kind of information I give you. I know that you're going to protect it. I know that you're going to use it in a way that's not going to end up in places where it shouldn't end up, and so on and so forth. So that was the first. The second bit was the legislation around the National Payment Systems Act 2020, which seeks to regulate companies that offer financial services. And this has been a whole lot more elaborate because it looks at the operations of the companies that are involved in financial systems. And because of that, it gives the companies that would interoperate confidence about each other. If I'm a holder of a certificate or a license from the central bank, and banks have been at this forever, Bank A is able to trust Bank B because they know Bank B has gone through the rigors of the regulation of the central bank in the way they handle data, in the way they interpret that data, in the way they store that data, and so on. Now that the central bank has moved that level of legislation, of oversight to the other financial service providers, it gives the comfort within the industry players that they can be trusted. And once trust has been established, then it gives rise to interoperability, because now I can go to Mr. Mutana and tell him, look, can I plug into your API and be able to send you information? And he'll say, can I see your certificate from the central bank? Are you a bona fide provider of financial services? If I produce that, because he's gone through the same rigors to get that license, he will know that I am a bona fide provider, and therefore my systems are stable, they are secure, and so on and so forth. So that trust already gives that. So yes, there is a bit of legislation, and that legislation, of course, it can be improved, and I'm sure it will be improved with time. So in terms of the legal framework to enable interoperability, the answer is yes. I think the second question was, is there appetite for it? Having been in the industry 16 now, almost 17 years, are we comfortable doing interoperability, or do we like working in silos? I think the short answer is that yes, there is not just the appetite, but there's also the need. Remember, at the end of the day, we are trying, as my colleagues eloquently put it, we're trying to make sure the customer who is consuming our services has no barriers. You imagine for a moment if the only calls you could ever make were to the telecom to which you subscribe. Imagine if the only calls you could ever make were to MTN. And if you had to call someone on Airtel, you had to go and look for an Airtel phone and then call the person on Airtel. It is that same limitation we're trying to remove in financial services. The portability of services across different platforms. So, is there a need? Yes. Is there appetite there? I think the simple answer is yes. And the way systems, the way companies have begun, and I was happy to hear my colleague, Mr. Mutana, speaking about open systems as opposed to closed ones. I think that it's a paradigm shift where they recognize, and not just them, but everyone, that the only way to survive is not to protect what you have, but to share it. It's a paradox that when you share it, then you get more. When Mr. Mutana allows people on Airtel to send money to MTN Mobile Money, what is in effect doing is expanding the scope of the number of people that can actually send money into his ecosystem. So he benefits in doing that. So it has both a financial advantage for him, but also it allows where he could easily protect, say, his 11 million subscribers, and say Airtel won't have a share of those, and Airtel goes and protects their own group. They're now saying, we will open it up, and together we'll have a group of 17 point something million people that can send money across ecosystems. So the paradox is that in sharing is where you grow actually. Right. And so, and banks have of course come up to say, let's be players in this. Let's allow people to move money from their mobile wallets into bank accounts. I think at the beginning there was a very big China wall between mobile wallets and bank accounts. That has fallen away now. We know that movement of money is very, very easy from mobile to bank and so on. But there's still a lot that can be done. I mean, it's still nascent times, but there's so much innovation, and I'm glad we have a room of innovators here. I've been going around and hearing some of the innovations that are going on that are going to completely obliterate the walls between the different platforms. What was the third question again?
You have answered the questions. You mixed the second and the third one. Competently you have.
Sorry, then?
Yeah, you have answered both the three questions.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now that these four gentlemen have said very good things about financial interoperability, I want to make them a little uncomfortable. Mr. Mutana and Mr. Tamale, I'm going to call you by your surnames, sorry. Why is financial interoperability very expensive? Why is it that when I'm sending money from MTN to Airtel, where I send and I'm charged MTN to MTN 600 shillings, MTN to Airtel I'm charged 2,000, among others. Remember, Stefan, you always say you are targeting with the customers. Why are you making it impossible for us? Why is it very expensive? 2 minutes to Mr. Mutana and 2 minutes to Mr. Potamari.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. Pricing is a very important, and any entrepreneur, and the guys out at the back will know that pricing is a key component of what constitutes value to a person. Now, we've had these discussions on interoperability, not just, MTN, Airtel, but even thinking wider at an African level, how we can make these wallets interoperable, because people move. Remember, I always said, go back to the person. People move, okay? People are moving from Nigeria to Uganda, Uganda to Ghana, and whatever, and they have these mobile wallets. So they want those things to work. They don't want to get to a country and then have to register and set up the same, a country-specific wallet. So always solve for the people of business issue. They're business travelers, they're tourists, and they want to have one wallet. Okay? Now, why is interoperability deemed to be expensive? I'll give you a very, very small example just around mobile money. So you guys know that today, mobile money, and if you look at the evolution of mobile money, is that it has an agent network, right? Those amazing men, women, young people who are out there in the kiosks, who are out there at arm's length for you to be able to cash in, cash out, right? And you know that when you cash in, do you pay? Do you pay when you cash in?
No.
So you don't pay. Okay. Someone has to pay. Someone has to pay for that entrepreneur to cover their rent, to cover their costs. They need to eat. And then there's the risk. They are handling cash. Unfortunately, you've also heard of situations where they've been accosted, haven't you? Yeah. So business exists within society. Now, specifically to that point, whenever any cash-in happens, there's a commission that is paid to that agent. Now, as Ronald pointed out, imagine there's interoperability between, say, Airtel and MTN. Remember, for that e-value that is flowing between these different systems, either partner has paid for that e-value to be created because they have to pay that agent, and the customer doesn't. That's the model we have today. Okay? So there is a cost to that e-float. And that's why you'll see when there's interoperability, there's usually that cost. Now your next question is, why is it kind of premium to on-net, or what I call P2P? P2P within or cash out within specific networks. Now that is where the opportunity lies. We must bring down that cost between ourselves. And there are ongoing talks between us to make sure that we can make it easier for people to exchange dreams, do business, to invest. Because at the end of the day, we're looking at it as e-value, but there are real strategic reasons behind these money movements. Okay? So we are, as industry players, talking about it, and I believe you in the very near future, you may see some changes. Yes.
Fair. Paul, tell me, why are you very expensive? When I'm sending money from Stanbic to my Standard Chapter, it becomes very expensive. Yet when I'm sending from MTN to MTN, it is very cheap. Why are you making our lives unbearable?
So I'll agree with my previous colleague. It's all about the costs that we incur to deliver that service. You'll find that we've got licenses we're maintaining, we've got infrastructure, we've got an agent network, we've got a whole technology suite that we run to see that we can offer that service. Those are not details we'll offer you, the customer, beforehand to tell you this is what it goes through, but that's what happens at the back of it. But interestingly is, and it might come up along the way, is that we're still running our businesses as silos. I look at the banking business as a bank, and I look at its survival that way. I look at you, the customer, helping me meet the several costs that I meet. So does my partner at a mobile network operator. Perhaps, and as my colleague mentioned, if we sat down and looked at the entire ecosystem that we are powering, and we looked
that can even be made better to say same hour, if possible. And of course, the ultimate is the moment I make the payment, whoever is my supplier gets their cut of the payment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I have a lot of questions coming in. There are over 20. Unfortunately, we can't answer them here. But I can assure whoever sent questions, the gentlemen are here. I'm going to speak to them again. We are going to organize sessions for each one of them because I've seen 4 questions going to Ronald. I've seen 6 questions on my phone going to Stanford Montana alone. Of course, many of them are complaining because MTA is expensive on Airtel, but that we shall discuss in that session. I've seen 3 questions to John Mark, and some of them standing. Why they are not very open to young developers like those behind them. But at the right time, we shall answer the questions. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I request you to go out for a photo moment for the 4 of you as I invite the next moderator, who will be Cleopatra, the CEO of Club Tangasa. Cleopatra will be taking on the next panel session. Gentlemen, like I'm saying, Cleopatra is the CEO of Club Tangasa. Club Tangasa is an organization that is empowering young kids through coding, teaching them how to code among other things. Yes, now I'll ask you to come use the microphone on the other side. Thank you very much. As we wait, yes. The next panel, as Cleopatra takes the stand, the panelists on the next panel are Wayne Nafo from Jumo. We have Esther Carrere from Ise Agric. We have Ivan Ojapol, who is a trade and technology lawyer. We have Jameson, who is the managing director of HiPipo. We also have Mr. Ronald Rakibumba, who is an inclusive digital finance services consultant with UNCDF. Those are next panelists. Please. Yes. Hi. How are you doing? All right. The microphone, please. Thank you. Yes, to those watching us on BBS Telefina, panel source ibadde eyogera ku ngeri omuntu gy'asobola okuweereza ssente neziva mu Stanbic Bank nezigenda mu MTN neziva mu MTN obwomwe nezigenda mu Airtel. Abaami ababaddewo ku panel source babadde bava mu Stanbic Bank, MTN, Pegasus batugambye newankubadde emiwendo gy'okuweereza okuva ku mukutu ogumugendo ku mulala gikyali waggulu, bakola buli kisoboka okugezaako okugikendeeza era batuwadde essuubi ti maaso awo ojja kubanga almost ssente zezimu z'oweereza okuva ku MTN okudda ku MTN zezimu nez'oweereza okuva ku Airtel n'okudda ku MTN oba okuva mu Sentinel okudda mu Equity. Mwebale nnyo. Thank you very much. Over to you, Claire.
Hi everybody. I'm so grateful to HiPipo and the team that has been responsible for organizing this event. I think I'm not alone. HiPipo as a team, we are so grateful, especially as a Gaza. Okay. For those of you who have been at our store, you could place us under Editech. So we are thrilled that we get to feature in season 2 along the wonderful and powerful and as well as the small FinTechs. So Nicholas already pulled up the panel. Panel, you're welcome. Okay. So we are going to introduce ourselves again so that the audience get to know who is who. I'll start with the ladies. Wendy, you're going first.
Hello. Hi everyone, I'm Wendy Nafo, I'm the Country Operations Coordinator for Jumo, Uganda. Do you need to the audience first? So Jumo is the market-leading banking as a service platform that enables transfer of funds real time to customers at the lowest operational cost possible. Currently, we have a partnership with Airtel Uganda offering the web-related products.
Thank you, Mercy.
Yes. Hi everyone.
everyone. My name is Esther Carrera. I'm the head of business development and marketing, and I'm the founder at Easy and Green. We are an agtech company in Ghana founded. Mobile phone. Yeah, so we're an agtech company in Ghana founded, committed to creating solutions for farmers, very farmer-centric, providing an end-to-end solution for agriculture, for production needs, for reports and out-market for smallholder farmers across Uganda. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Esther. The gentleman next will start with Ivan.
Hi everyone, my name is Ivan Mojaloop. I'm a big producer to tech and trade lawyer. I'm a certificate of leading tech lawyer. I'm attached to Origo Advocates, and I regularly advise leading startups, e-commerce companies, and what have you, on matters concerning legal and regulatory aspects as far as technology is concerned. I'm happy to be here, and I'm grateful to HiPipo for organizing this event.
Thank you, Ivan. Next up, Anand.
Thank you, Maria. My name is Nelson Chuka. I am the managing director of a company called Discount Card System, which trades under the trade name CardPesa. CardPesa is basically a tier 4 microfinance institution which focuses mainly in simple English as a business that funds people's hustles. So we try to give you money in good form to ensure you do business.
Thank you, Nelson, for your panel. Last but not least, the marvelous Ronald.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Ronald, and I work with the UN Capital Development Fund, and I focus on inclusive technologies in agriculture and finance. UNCDF focuses on using capital to unlock markets, especially in the 46 least developed countries, though I know that number is changing due to a wave in Southeast Asia where a lot of LDCs are coming up. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Ronald. Welcome to the panel. And then me, that you know me know, Cleopatra Kanyunyuzi, CEO of Club Tangaza. Please go ahead and check us out on our website, www.clubtangaza.com. I'm going to be moderating the panel in our second discussion, which is titled Women and Special Groups such as Youth, Persons with Disabilities, etc. Does regulation risk excluding some people from the formal financial ecosystem? So that's going to be our area of discussion. So let's talk regulation. Okay. We have what we call the National Payment Systems Act that was passed back in April this year. Okay, you're all aware about this. Okay, so it's basically about regulation. Okay, and regulation is a part of our day-to-day lives, right? We regulate what we eat. We regulate what our children are exposed to. We regulate so many things. So it's a very important aspect when it comes to different aspects of our lives. Okay? So, Ivan, you're going to take the first question. What is the National Payment Systems Act?
Thank you very much. Well, it is an act that was enacted to regulate the payments industry. Some people say, I think it's a misnomer to regulate the FinTech industry, because you and I know that FinTech is beyond payments. But according to the central bank and the regulator and the policymakers, they claim it is an act that was enacted to regulate the FinTech industry. So basically, it's there to set the rules as far as the payments industry is concerned, to improve efficiency as far as the payment industry is concerned, give powers to the central bank as a supervisor and regulator of the payments industry. It comes with some revolutionary innovations in our market, or even in East Africa. For example, the regulatory sandbox, which you must give credit to the central bank for. Basically, a regulatory sandbox is within the payments ecosystem. You'll be allowed to test a product, and if it passes the test, then the regulator will upgrade it to the licensing categories. So they are under the National Payment Systems Act. There are 3 categories that are supposed to be licensed: an operator of a payment system, a payment service provider, and an issuer of a payment instrument. People have criticized it for some of the stifling, depending on which side you sit. A regulator will say it is enabling or it is to regulate, while on the other side, an innovator or a player in the market will say it's stifling. Minimum capital requirements. So basically, this is when you're coming into the market, you must come. If, for example, you're getting incorporated from a start at your OSB, this is the minimum capital that you need. If you're an operator of a payment system, for example, a large fund player, you're going to have 1 billion as your minimum capital requirement. Then alongside the minimum capital requirement will come licensing fees. For example, if a large player, a payment system operator, it's 25 million. So in addition to the minimum capital requirements, will also be that. The regulator, of course, argues, and you cannot sometimes blame the regulator, that it is informed by what is going on around it, that it is informed by history. For example, last year there was an incident, and we all know about it. The regulator is always interested in consumer protection, as government getting some taxes, macroeconomic and microeconomic policy, financial stability, and what have you. At the same time, the regulator tries to balance that with encouraging innovation. The question is, does the minimum capital requirements and licensing fee encourage innovation? Or was this act in the first place meant for everyone in the market, or it was meant for certain players? So, in a nutshell, that is the NPS Act. It comes along with 3 regulations: the agency regulations, the sandbox regulations, and the general regulations governing the payments industry. I don't know if you want me to go into more details, because there's a lot.
No, Ivan.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that.
Yes.
For those of you who didn't hear him very well when he was introducing himself, Ivan is a trade and technology lawyer, so he's speaking from a very informed point of view. Okay? So next up, still to answer the same question, we have the amazing Wendy. What is the National Payment Systems Act?
Thank you, Cleopatra. I don't know if I can be able to add to more than what Ivan has said. But I think for me, who is not in the legal field, I just know that it's an act that will be regulating, payment systems, the providers of payment systems, for which some of them are our partners. It will also be giving setting what function BOE will be playing, which will definitely have an impact on some of the business that we do, because if they're regulating the providers and we're partnering with them, it's some sort of indirect regulation. We'll have to report to be able to support the partners that we work with. My thoughts are not very far from what Ivan said. I do appreciate certain aspects on in the Act, like the regulatory sandbox framework in Section 16. And, I think this will drive inclusion. But again, there's some, on the other side, it's quite expensive to be able to even apply to participate in it, because you need to prove a source of funds. Now, if we all know that like the guys back there who are coming up with these things where they're going to be getting the minimum, capital requirement, and then the license fees, and then the annual, money that they'll be renewing those licenses, somehow it's inclusive, but then also like it's a hard bar. Like even in the 6 months, let's say that you're given to try out operating without a license, is that enough time for those startups to be able to get capital to be able to prove that they can be licensed at that point? However, on a really good note, on some part of the people who would be able to, the systems that will be able to be eligible for these licenses, they do mention something that caught my attention around, regulating people giving licenses to people whose objective is to serve the unbanked and underbanked. which is also our objective as a company as Jumo, which is great. And also it further mentions later in another section that electronic money can be used for savings, credit, and also insurance products. So instead of a partner like me having to go and get a license, I can be able to do that with my partners instead, which is a good thing.
Okay, thank you so much, Wendy. So from what we've heard so far, they are majorly good remarks, but there is also that aspect of stifling, like Ivan said, for especially like the newcomers in the fintech domain. Okay, thank you so much for that. So, Ronald, you're going to take up the next question. You're a stakeholder in the fintech industry, right? What does the NPS Act mean to you?
Yeah, thank you very much, Cleopatra. So, I think when we look at when we break it down as a regulation, there are quite, I would say, like 3 key layers to look at. And as Ivan has mentioned, there is the layer of the people who are licensees, the providers, ranging from those who issue electronic money to those who support who provide platforms for transaction, to those even in the banking space who provide bank to wallet or wallet to bank transactions. And I think to a large extent, this regulation was to catch up with the evolution of mobile money, because it moved over a decade from a means of P2P transaction. It became also a bank to wallet transaction, and it also became more than payments. It became savings, it became credit, and there's been in the news about if the savings bank that holds these credit transactions were to be compared to their peers based on number of customers, they would be actually at the top of the tier. So mobile money has moved so far in these times to a point whereby traders can make transactions out of the country using virtual cards. So if you don't have a bank account, you can actually on your phone acquire a virtual card and all that. So I think in some way, when we look at last year, the third and fourth quarter, when this act was passed by the parliament and then the president assented to it, to the last month of December, January, when the central bank had to actually now develop the regulation, I think in some light, they did a commendable job in such a short period of time to kind of normalize that. However, I would want us to look at the second and third layer. So the second layer is the businesses and individuals that fall in these 7 tiers of electronic money in the regulation, ranging from the individual account, which most of us hold, to the education institutions, to the government, to the merchants and retail agents. So there is a tier of 7 categories which are licensed. And I think when we think of women and when we think of vulnerable groups like refugees, or when we think of the urban-rural divide, one of the things that strike me is regulation on its own appears innocent. Like, for example, it requires KYC, like your national ID. It requires, if you're a business, that you should have a number with a business registered. And when we reflect even within 2 kilometers of where we are right now, most of the mobile money agents will struggle, for example, to register business. They will struggle to know the way around getting all those different requirements for them to remain mobile money agents. And when we take it to an individual level, I think one of the things that has come out, Cleopatra, is that even the access to a national ID is not evenly distributed among women and men. And especially in rural areas, you find that women who desire, for example, to open an electronic money account are constrained by lack of an ID. The famous story is always the lack of a phone. There is always connectivity. it's always access to a nearby agent, but they've forgotten inhibitions around how even just a lack of an ID becomes an issue. And lastly, one of the big pieces that I'm trying, and UNCDF is trying to bring to light, is within the national payments regulation, the ID required for refugees is one that 60% of refugees don't have. So in the regulation, they speak of a refugee ID, and less than 40% of refugees have a refugee ID. Most of them, they have a very secure document called an attestation, and that attestation has a lot of security features, including iris scan and all that. So Cleopatra would say that the devil is in the detail in terms of the regulation stipulates what's required, but attaining those requirements is not an even ground. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Ronald, for that. It has been very informative. Okay, I hope the audience has taken down several notes from Ronald's submission. Okay, so as we continue, our panelists, we've been requested to be audible. Okay, so let's speak right up into our mics, like that. Okay, so pull your mics near you. Okay, so they need to hear you. You need to hear your great input. Okay, so mobile money has been regulated by BAU, but now with the rise of or the spring of several FinTechs that are providing financial solutions for like so many businesses, government has come in and through the Act is regulating these FinTechs, right? So basically, Bank of Uganda is going to be the regulator for all the upcoming FinTechs. Nelson, how does this make the FinTech industry better?
Okay, thank you very much. I normally look at things from the layman perspective. Okay. So I will not use any complicated terms. To be entirely honest, Bank of Uganda's National Payments Act regulates financial technology providers who are engaged in payments that are outside cash. So there are some FinTechs which do not are not involved in movement of cash, like Jumo next door. So Jumo is not supposed to be registered under the National Payments Act. The whole idea of, if you want to understand what the Act is about, it's about creating what they call, when you see fiat money, that is cash and coins, there's what they call legal tender. That means a government has said that can be a store of value or a measure of value. So what the National Payments Act is trying to do is create legal tender for e-money. So what does it mean to us? As CardPesa is not entirely a FinTech, it's just a customer service company that gives people money. So we use FinTechs to do what we do. Now, what it implies to us as the National Payments Act informs us on who we can deal with. Because the issue comes down to those people you're dealing with. If I send my client money through your platform and you close down, where do I go for recourse? So what Bank of Uganda is trying to do, or the government is trying to do, is to say these are the players. These are the guys who we recognize to be able to provide you legal tender in e-payments. And so you, as, for example, we are looking into women and children and people with disabilities. The key issue is that who are they going to deal with? And this National Payment Act gives us a benchmark by which to choose who you're going to deal with. So for me, currently I am dealing with MTN, Airtel, Flutterwave, Equity Bank, NCBA Bank, my boss is here, and a few other people. The whole idea is all those guys have some level of regulation and they have passed a certain thing. So I don't have to go back and ask them, who is your boss? How much money do you have? If they've passed the NPA Act and they've got the license, I don't have to ask those questions. And so the national payments platform, from my perspective, or FinTech's perspective, is just reducing the amount of work you have to do so that you know who you deal with. And that helps you give confidence to you who is paying out and also your customers, saying that if this guy is paid me and they're dealing with, for example, this company, then all of these businesses I'm dealing with are regulated and I can trust them. So that is the issue. It's an issue of trust.
Okay. Thank you, Nelson. Actually, at Club Tangaza, we also use FinTechs like MTN, mobile money. We also use Airtel Money Pay. And we also use Flutterwave, okay? But that is after doing a lot of research, okay? So, yes, as a service providers, as people who build products that are going to be sold to customers and so on, we need to work with FinTechs and financial service providers that are regulated, people whom we can trust, just like Nelson said. Ronald, yes, what does this mean to you? Because you're also a stakeholder in the FinTech domain.
Yes, thanks. I'll do a better job at speaking close to the mic. I think I want to say that my colleague has raised a very key point here around the lives of the customers whom we are trying to serve. So their lives go beyond financial services and include other needs, like Esther's companies working on agricultural services. So you find Jumo provides a list of comprehensive services they provide to customers. And this has been the key learning over the last 10 years, that if you're really trying to say, let's talk about what employs 70% of the country, which is farming. If you're really trying to provide financial services to a farmer, and I recall maybe 6 years ago there was a conversation around make sure that when you're providing a loan to a farmer, you're aware of the seasonality and the payback period and all that. And over time, as agricultural insurance also cropped in, it was being delivered over phones. And I recall every year the government has been providing subsidies on premiums and all that. So I raised the point that FinTechs play an interesting role, because to call them FinTechs sometimes is not to give them the full description, because some of them are into agtech. I've had conversations with a firm that started as a FinTech and then now has also agricultural services. So what do you call them? So I think overall what I do see is securing mobile money in a sense, because the regulation now does require trustees and does require some capital provisions. However, as we know, as my colleague also raised, is that those can be an inhibition for market entrance. So when I look at the horizon, what I do see is that mobile money, what we've seen it do in the last 10 years, this regulation is going to be obsolete in 5 to 10 years. Because this regulation covers what is presently possible, bank to wallet. These were things that were unheard of 10 years ago. So I have a feeling that even as in this National Payments Systems Regulation, there's a provision for a sandbox, where if you have something that's outside of the current regulation and you'd like to experiment with it, that you have that avenue. So what I think is we are still going to see more follow-up regulations around this, because there are many gaps about other aspects of what should be provided. However, my last point, Cleopatra, would be that I'm more concerned about what's going to happen to the mobile money agent who doesn't have a business registered. Because the parity, the whole convenience, and it's also one of the level 1 principles around the cost and convenience, is based on 100-meter radius from here, I'll be able to access an agent. So if you don't provide a platform for someone who only has the national ID and doesn't have the sophistication of registering a business, then you're going to stifle the ecosystem. And what will happen is that most of us will then start to use other means of transaction, because there is this comfort you have. I've ever taken a flight like to Arua and then realized that all I have is a phone and I don't have any cash. But that ability that you're confident that the moment you reach Arua, you just need to leave that location and you'll be able to access a mobile money agent. So the risk is the industry not being able to support this entrepreneur who is doing a big service and helping also the banking sector who don't necessarily need to have ATMs everywhere and all that. So I think for me, all eyes are on who in this ecosystem is going to provide business development services to somebody to be able to register with URA, register with URSB, and also be able to then apply with the MNOs.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ronald. Okay, so we have very little time left, so we are going to rush through the remaining questions. To the awesome Esther, who's trying to improve the lives of farmers. Okay? Do you think the National Payment Systems Act has been publicized enough, especially to the target audience?
Thank you so much, Cleopatra. I hope I'm audible enough and everyone can hear me. I like Ronald's submissions so much because they talk about the downstream person. And for me, when I talk about inclusivity, the smallholder farmer comes to mind, the person who gets 500,000 Ugandan shillings after 6 months of their season of maize. So to answer your question just very quickly, I wouldn't really say that it has been publicized extensively, because even us who are like third-party users of fintech companies, we have to be proactive to go and learn about this new act. What does it mean? You have to talk to the likes of the Ivans, Bowmans, for an interpretation, right? So I wouldn't really say that it has been extensively publicized to the extent of understanding that you need a national ID to be included. John Mark talked about exclusivity. I think it's going to have some more exclusivity for the lower end people, honestly. So in this case, when I talk about lower end people, it's mostly smallholder farmers in my head, who are in remote areas, already struggle to find mobile money agents who have enough float if you're to pay them out. So I would say there needs to be more education and sensitization for people, about the National Payment Act.
Okay, thank you so much, Esther. Thank you so much for that submission. And this question is posed to Ronald quickly in like 30 seconds, okay? Are the list included communities, for example, women, the youth, and persons with disabilities? Are they catered for? Do they have leveled ground when it comes to the National Payment Systems Act? Microphone. Okay. You can use Esther. Thank you, Esther.
Thank you, Esther. So in 30 seconds, I would say that let's look at the bigger picture, even beyond electronic money, to be able to answer the question of is it inclusive? And when we look at the bigger picture, we look at other regulations around electronic money. And I must say, Cleopatra and my colleagues, that the recent mobile money withdrawal tax of 0.5%, what it did demonstrate, we did conduct a study around the impact of this mobile money tax. And we did find that while us in this room and in most of the urban areas, people had an alternative of pushing money to banks and then withdraw via agents and all that. And you recall that mobile money was covering a gap. However, in rural areas, we found that most people said, we have no other alternative. So if I don't withdraw the money, what else can I do? So we found this disproportionate rural-urban feel around, or even I may call it a banked and banked feel around who pays this mobile money tax. So I would say that there is a cloud of things around electronic money. For example, even without the mobile money tax, the pre-tax withdrawal fees may seem insignificant, but they are not insignificant to rural customers. So I would say even beyond that, the last cloud I would layer on is, for example, the issue of connectivity not being universally accessible in rural areas, and the issue of access to devices. I know both MTN and Airtel have started a pay-go kind of situation where there is a staggered payments that you make. And we know this has been transformative for the solar industry, where people are able to own a device over a long period of time by making smaller payments. But I think we need more of those disruptions. And I must say, we know that in Uganda currently that 17 million devices are future phones. They are not basic phones, because basic phones are about 5 million as per UCC statistics of 2020. But that does tell you that you're dealing with 7 million smartphone devices and you're dealing with a whole 17 million future phones. But why is that relevant? That's relevant because when the fintech providers go to UCC to get a license for a short code, because if you're going to serve someone who's not on a smartphone, you need a USSD code so that they can use the basic phones to transact over a USSD platform. But Uganda has one of the highest charges of close to $11,000 to get that short code from UCC. If you compare with our peers in Tanzania, Kenya, it's not even above $3,000. So I think if we know who this market is, this is a market that's not on the internet, this is a market that's on a future phone or in a basic phone, then we need to design our policies, and I would say we look at Bank of Uganda, we look at national payment system, but we need to look at the entire digital payments or financial inclusion ecosystem so that we can catch these gaps and patch them together.
Okay. Thank you so much for that submission. Very informative again. So we are going to wind up our talk. It's funny that Ronald mentioned that the Act may not withstand the test of time. So I actually had the same thought, and I was going to ask the panelists that. So Ronald already highlighted that. So whether or not the Act stands the test of time, okay, because we have it with us right now, we are being regulated as FinTechs and financial service providers. How do we move forward? How do the stakeholders, the service providers in the financial domain, how do they ensure that their platforms are secure, their platforms are efficient, but at the same time, they are not excluding the minority groups or the groups that we had earlier talked about, like women, the youth, and persons with disabilities. So it's our final question, so we're going to take it up right from Ivan up to Wendy.
Thank you very much. I disagree that the law or the Act won't stand the test of time. It will stand the test of time. Why? The Act in and of itself has ways of amending itself. It has an amendment provision. That will not render it useless. I mean, technology is evolving. Technology is a fast-paced industry, and those are some of the difficulties that come with regulating technology. So the Parliament has powers to amend the Act as and when. And also the Minister has powers, if Parliament will be giving him issues, to come up with regulations that will perhaps regulate whatever will be coming up through the course of time. So importantly for me, it is from the regulator that I'd want to address. I think the regulator, well, they have attempted to regulate the industry, but now it is on their part. I know, for example, they've tried to put the house in order. They have a FinTech office and what have you, have dealt with them. But now they should embrace what they call regulatory technology, RegTech. These are FinTechs. These are techies, very fast-paced people. As a lawyer, I don't want to get an inquiry from my client to go and inquire from Bank of Uganda, and Bank of Uganda takes ages to reply. If the client is losing money, the client perhaps has a breach somewhere, what have you. So regulatory technology should be embraced by the regulator in order to ensure there's efficiency as far as the regulation of the sector is concerned. But also importantly, you introduced me earlier as a trade lawyer. Trade and technology are intertwined. The reason we're talking about fintech is to enable trade. Unfortunately, the statistics in Africa are that 80% of Africa is still informal. Informal trade takes a day. And like Mr. Robert has mentioned, the women take the largest chunk of that. So we already have issues with internet penetration, we already have issues with informal trade. And then you say that these people should become formal and should all of a sudden, their agents should be approved by Bank of Uganda and what have you. But importantly, at the African Continental Free Trade Area, which I've all heard about, is an important initiative that is going on. It's called the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System that has been mooted by Afri-Exim Bank that is working together with the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat. So I'd encourage the fintechs here to find a way of tapping into it. Fintechs, PayTech particularly, has already been leading the way. The likes of Flutterwave, the likes of Eversend have already been doing cross-border trade, even without the AFCFT as it's called. So tap into that and see how we can bring our informal people into the fintech industry, into the payments industry proper, and we find a way of collaborating so that we can take the industry forward. But importantly, I'd encourage the regulator, Bank of Uganda, to continue consulting. I follow closely what happens in the UK with the Information Commissioner's Office. They send out calls for papers, calls for proposals, calls for consultation. So consultation is key. You don't just consult once and have one meeting in Bastille here and say, now we are ready to pass an act to pass a regulation. Continue consulting, continue study from the real industry experts. You as a regulator are not the expert. The persons, the players in the market are the experts, so continue consulting and make sure it's a robust, comprehensive consultation.
Thank you so much, Ivan. Esther, you're up next.
Okay. I'll pick it up from how Ivan ended his statement that the regulator needs to keep consulting the experts. So in terms of how do we move forward from here, I'm thinking of two things. So I think the regulator should use a lean approach because, as we say, technology is really a fast-growing industry. Sometimes you fail to catch up with it. And now when we are talking about fintechs and we are talking about 3 businesses here, 4 businesses with you, Cleopatra, that are third-party users. So you see the different business models that are being built from the core fintechs products. So I would really strongly agree with Ivan that they need to use the lean approach, keep consulting the users in the industry, not only the so-called fintechs, but going beyond to businesses that have developed business models on top of their core products. Just a second thing, quickly, I would also say that some of these policies and acts really need to be user-centric because there's no way you come up with a regulation that is looking at a pyramid of different people and you end up excluding people. Because the main point is not to exclude people like in this case. The point is to protect the consumer. So if you're protecting the consumer and then you're excluding them, it really doesn't make sense at the end of the day. So my second point would be that all these regulations should be very user-centric, understand all the users that the act is going to affect, for example, and let it be tailored to their needs. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Esther. Ronald, you're up next in a minute.
Yeah, let me try. I've been over time for long. So I would say just 2 things. One is I'm concerned about the plight of fintechs in a competitive environment that's not even. So if, for example, which fintech has access to the NIRA database to do KYC validation? Which fintech has integration with telecoms to be able to facilitate the payments, even if they are not in payments industry? For example, the fintech is providing seed loans to farmers, and those loans are repayable over mobile money. Which fintech has that interoperability? So I want to say that I'm concerned about how we can make it easier for innovators to be able to access these giant game changer platforms. And while they do that, we are not blind that some of these large players are also innovating maybe even similar products. So how we manage this competitive environment that's not even is of a concern. But now I will end with what Esther touched on, which is, for me, I think we should not ignore that product is king. We like to think that the financial products we are offering to rural areas are in some way superior to what they already have. But I must say we've seen markets like in Bangladesh where, for example, when you introduce mobile money or you introduce a bank account and it has a savings component, and we've seen that the existing practices that farmers have, for example, to store money in form of live animals or with the farm produce, that's more profitable. That over time, they're actually earning more from their investment as opposed to keeping money on an account. So I think the challenge is what Esther has said, which is what's the efficacy of that product that you're trying to take to rural areas, and don't make the assumption that it's superior to what people are already doing. Most of us in this room have grown up in households where they made very smart financial decisions around investing in education and all that. And so they get it. What's only missing is a user-centered design approach where they are incorporated in the development of these services. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ronald. I couldn't agree more. The people that are considered to be at the bottom of the chain are actually more informed and more skilled. But when it comes to the technology, they are probably intimidated by the ease of use of some of these platforms that are being developed day in and day out. Nelson, what's your take?
I will be the spoiler. People think that the National Payments Act is about FinTechs. It's not. It's about Bank of Uganda's self-preservation. What do I mean? Bank of Uganda, banks do three things. One, quickly accept deposits. Two, transact, meaning move money from here to there. Three, give loans. So as a Bank of Uganda, it's about managing those three things. Well, everybody's here saying that the NPA Act will be dead in 5 years. I don't think so. Because what is essentially happening is, if you read that act carefully, I'm not a lawyer, but I saw the part that tickled me. It has a section which says it will regulate e-payments or electronic payments by private players and itself. So what is it saying? It says that tomorrow or next year or 5 years from now, Bank of Uganda will introduce what they call a central bank digital currency. What is a central bank digital currency? A central bank digital currency is mobile money. A central bank digital currency is PayPal money or e-money. And when it does that, what will the lives of the banks, which have bullion vans, storerooms, you have to take your money to a teller, and all the buildings built around that. So the National Payments Act, in my view, my simplistic view, is the basis upon which Bank of Uganda will preserve itself in 10 years' time, when everyone in the world is using Bitcoin. So what is important is how these laws cater for people who will not be able to use, for example, if you're talking about electronic money. The key issues are, what kind of gadgets do you have? What do you use for identification? If somebody doesn't have a phone. In China currently, if you can't pay by something called QQ or Tencent or WeChat, people don't take the renminbi. So all these laws, so much as they look at like they are archaic, there's a method to what we call the madness. And so in my view, we as financial services provider should be finding ways to get in line and be able to innovate so that those people who cannot use e-money or e-platforms at this level can also get to the level where they can use them. So in my view, NPA is just the basis. We shall innovate it, we shall change it, and in future you'll realize that this was the point at which Uganda changed. And how do we ensure that the people who are not educated, people who can't read, the people who can't see, are also able to transact within this economy?
Thank you so much, Nelson. self-preservation of Bank of Uganda. Guys, you should look into this. Next up, Wendy.
Thanks, Cleopatra. Very interesting submission there, Nelson. I think for me, on a let's say like a beginning or a smaller scale, I think that the Act has given or is giving us regulatory clarity. Operating in a space where you're not sure if you're doing, are you doing it right? Are you just looking at a few guidelines that you must follow, especially for, partners and private players in the payment system. I think this has given them something to look at, what to do, what is expected of them, what are the consequences, which is a beginning. It's a start. So I like that we have a start. And I just hope that in the future, the central bank can be able to relook into this. As you've seen all the submissions from the different panelists, there are some missing points. The Act does not look at the end user. It's a very thin line on who it affects now, but not, we, the partners, the customer at the end of the journey. So I hope that from now, after hearing feedback from, the people in the industry consulting, they can start assessing what the changes would have to be. And because the fintech industry moves on very fast, this has to be fast, because then by the time it's changed, something else has changed. We also work towards a common goal. We need to remember that both the central bank and the fintechs, we all want to include the person at the bottom of the pyramid. What are we going to do about this? Are we putting regulations? Is the Bank of Uganda putting regulations that are again stepping in the way of other players to reach that common goal? So there needs to be that assessment. If we're all working towards something, then make it easy for everyone to be able to, for us to be able to achieve the bigger picture here.
Okay. So with that, we've come to the end of the second panel discussion. Thank you so much, our panelists. The session has been very educative, very informative, and it has opened the eyes of many of the audience, many people out there in the audience who didn't know what this Act was all about. And yes, with Nelson stressing over and over again that it's not about the fintechs only. Okay, so I hope you guys have learned a lot from this session. We're so grateful to HiPipo once again. Thank you so much, panelists. We can now leave.
Thank you so much, Cleopatra, again. And please do not forget, you can please. And outside is waiting for you for a photo moment as well as interviews. Thank you so much. Again, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. And we still appreciate the media available, that is Met Media. We've got BBS Telefina. We have got NTV around. We appreciate you. And we are live or on BBS Telefina AFA. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, and you can still push on the hashtags in case you are on Twitter. That is Level 1 Project. We have got hashtag 40 days, 40 fintechs. Surely there are rewards after, so I do not think you're part for someone who would surely wish to miss out on that. And with no further ado, I'm going to be inviting Nielsen Sangoho, who is a Flutterwave Uganda country manager, to come and highlight for us on the insights on building an African fintech icon or unicorn. Ladies and gentlemen, please a warm welcome to Nielsen Sangoho. Yes, Nielsen, you have 15 minutes or less, surely. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I need some. I put on my suit for today. I'm not normally in a suit, so I need some encouragement from the audience. I'm tempted to take Nelson's rabbit trail, but I'll desist from going down that road. I've been asked to speak about building a unicorn, and that's the buzzword these days. I know my colleague from SafeBoard and the other innovators, we're hearing so much about the unicorn and everything, But I'll just share some insights into how we did it at Flutterwave and what we're still doing and what caught the attention, of the people who believed in us. And I hope I'll give some value today to someone. Yeah, so I titled this Building an Enterprise Connected Payments Infrastructure for Africa. Why? Because that's the thing. That was a secret pill that got us the attention, Flutterwave we like to say that we're simplifying payments for what we call endless possibilities. The vision was really simple. I know many of the speakers who have come before me have highlighted how impossible it was, to just, make interoperability possible, even in the country. And we thought, if it's that difficult in the countries where we reside, how much more is it in Africa? And the idea is that we want to build one platform that connects businesses all over the world so that, a business today planning to, set up in Uganda, in Kenya, across Africa especially, will not have to worry about the payments. To date, we have processed over $9 billion in transaction value, and we have over 150 currencies supported on our platform. We are today available in over 34 countries and growing, and we provide a service to 300,000 plus businesses. Again, the idea here is, those numbers sound interesting and sound cool, but it's a real problem. It's a big problem. And I think the first takeout, as someone who's building, if it's PesaJet, if it's Easier Greek, whatever you're building, think of the pain point. What is the pain point in what you're doing? And so the key thing, especially in the fintech space is, one, is trust. People need to be able to believe in your platform, to put money through your platform. And so the first thing we did was we built for trust. There are standards that are globally acceptable, especially with cards that, we've seen for a while now. What we did is we undertook that path, the difficult path of getting certifications, be it PCI DSS, be it partnering with the leaders, Visa, MasterCard. These today have not only partnered with us, but have also invested in us as Flutterwave. The second thing is affordability, and this is it's a battle that it's always ongoing. Today we've already had our fair share of the affordability complaints, but when it came to moving money across borders, it was almost impossible. Today, I think one of our biggest value propositions is our settlements infrastructure. In every country where we go today, we not only get the license, but we get banking partners. And what that allows us to do is to be able to settle in all the countries I've mentioned. There are 34 countries. We can settle money. We can move money in and out of the ecosystem. And of course, the third thing is accessibility. People, a business, any business in the world doesn't want to do multiple integrations on payments. I think the first hindrance is the pain it takes for someone as a business owner to do one integration into one rail. Say, for example, MTN, mobile money. The expertise is not there today. If you go to, now to do that across multiple providers, Airtel, a bank, an acquirer, a card scheme, it becomes so tedious. We wanted, and we still believe that we want a business today to focus on their core competence. So if you're doing Easier Greek, focus on your business model. Let's do the heavy lifting. And so our team of experts, our team of technical partners, today we build out APIs for almost every platform available. If it's WordPress, if it's Shopify, whatever it is, Flutterwave builds out these APIs so that, the ordinary, salesperson in an SME downtown doesn't have to think of building a plugin to connect to a provider. And that gave us so much value. And so we invest a lot of resources in just getting the technical competences we need to be able to be at the forefront of innovation. The fourth thing there is customer focused. I remember being, part of a fellowship in China, and I had Nelson mentioning China. And, Jack Ma, who had hosted us for that fellowship, asked one thing. He said, look, as an innovator, you have to always think as you build out something. On the table where you sit, leave an empty seat for the customer. And it hit me personally. Because many times, and my background is computer science, you think of this innovative, creative idea, and you build it away from the customer who's going to use it. And we've seen a lot of learnings from just being out in the marketplace, being out with the customer who wants to use the platform that we're building. And for us, it's businesses. So we're always asking, what do you want to see? What more can we build? What can we build for you that you can't build with your own expertise? And it has given us an edge in terms of, being a very fast adopted platform. And of course, the fifth thing there is integrations, seamless integrations. All the things we realized early as we were building was that Uber came to us. And their pain point as well was, as a business coming into the African market, they didn't want to come and integrate with every provider because, again, the African ecosystem is very fragmented. Every country has something familiar that people pay with. And so one of the things that we had to do is figure out what can we provide today, of course for the local business because that's where our heart is, but for the international businesses coming into the continent. And today, we process payments for a couple of them, including Microsoft, Uber, Netflix, Booking.com. And it's because we thought and said, look, we must go into that path that no one wants to go on. The hard path of fighting with regulators, of doing all the technical integrations, and eventually connect the continent as one platform. And so what do you have to think of? Because we can't do this alone. Even with all the work we've done, we still need people. Many of them who are in this room. We still need, partners. Many of them who, are multinationals, banks. We don't believe that we can come and completely cut out everyone. What we're building is a synergy. We're building a connecting system. So the first thing you have to think of as a person who, again, dares to dream to build that next billion-dollar company is you can't do it alone. You must accept this. I think that's the first thing you must realize. And I know, the guys who went before us, even in this market, if it's Pegasus, if it's Yo Uganda, they have really set that example that we can't do this alone. And for me, I'm blessed that at the time where we live now, there's more acceptance because when I see things like NCBA working with MTN, it gives me much joy and much hope in the fact that we're now opening up our minds to think, that banks don't have to kill FinTechs, because the things that FinTechs are able to do today at an accelerated level, they potentially may not be able to happen inside the bank infrastructure. And, I know we are having so many discussions with almost all the banks here in terms of what can we do together to help build this ecosystem. And you must think like that. As an innovator building a FinTech, who can you work with today? And by solving either their problem or a problem together, it will give you mileage, leaps and bounds. Second thing is customers. And the customers are really interesting because the customers, in Steve Jobs' words, almost don't know what they want because they are only seeing what has existed. And I remember a time when, in the early days of, for example, Safe Border, I was sitting in Outbox, just listening to this concept. And the initial feeling in that room was, who would be willing today to take that extra step to pay for a border on the phone when they can just run down and pick the border? And that just makes you think of the customer. You have to think there's the problem that the customer knows, there's a problem that the customer doesn't know. So as an innovator, the challenge is upon you to think, how can you, beyond what already exists today, how can you see what's going to happen? How can you see that a phone today, won't need any buttons, yet a keyboard is sort of the standard practice. We have to be able to think like that. And what we thought of today was, why would I, as Neil, what would it take for me to make a payment to M-Pesa today instantly? And that was the thing which we asked ourselves every single day. How can I collect money today in Nigeria as a person who's teaching an online course about arts and crafts? Today we are able to power a couple of merchants who, in the pandemic, their businesses, they closed completely. But because of what we provide, they were able to tap into markets out of Uganda. And, we have a lady who, today, she trains arts and crafts, making of sandals. And the biggest consumer of her course on our platform, they're from Lagos. and we pay her on mobile money today. And again, that drives into my third point, innovation. At the heart of what we do, I've seen a lot of culture, and I'm Ugandan, so I speak of what I know. There's a lot of replication. There's a lot of copying. We're not solving problems. We are adapting ideas, which is a good thing because, it's a good way to learn. But beyond that, we must begin to build stuff that is relevant to our market. How can we today create stuff? In the pandemic, right dead middle of the pandemic, we thought and said, look, our typical customer who's Ugandan, they have a website. They have no website. They have been selling online and pushing ads on social media and being able to, use a payment link that we provide maybe to get paid. And we thought, how can we then drive them online? And we began a conversation around, why don't you build a platform that's like Shopify, but localized to Uganda or to Africa, if I may say that. And we built out a platform called Flatterwave Stores because our engineers were also in the pandemic at home. And this platform allows you today as a small business to come on board and upload products, pictures, and prices. You have a store, a template of a store. And again, thinking, our customers today, our merchants today, we have partners who are into logistics. How can we build that ecosystem where you have that platform free of charge, and then you can plug into a partner like Safe Border or, Pink Tie, these are our customers. How can we plug that ecosystem and build out that platform to create the next thing that hasn't been seen? Today in Uganda, we have 1,300 stores on that platform. And it's things like this that go beyond. We must go beyond just providing that API. Because I can tell you, in 10 people on the street, maybe 2 of them will know what an API is. So we must build out those platforms that are easily adoptable. And so, as we do these things, of course, you must know the local market. You must, again, think beyond where you are today. When you think of Uganda today, don't think of the 4 million people who are online today. Your goal should be, how do I get the rest of the 36 to go online? That's the way we solve. If there are no problems in our ecosystem, there will be no solutions. And so, the future is this. Today, we're in a global village. Today, you're able today, as a Ugandan, online. I believe this with all my heart. The next millionaires in dollars we're creating out of Uganda will come to the innovation space. And that is online, specifically. Through e-commerce, maybe, but they're going to be online. They're going to be paid online because they're going to sell beyond the borders of Uganda. The world on Flatterwave. How can you today ride on a platform like Flatterwave to scale your business? Today, we have helped close to 25 businesses out of Uganda to go into a market seamlessly without worrying about how they're going to get paid. How can you build your business thinking, how do I get such partners to take me beyond, the borders of Uganda? In March, the same time we closed our Series C raise, we had a partnership with PayPal that opens every business here to 377 million users. Today you can potentially sell on your platform, get paid via PayPal through Flatterwave. How can you harness and take opportunity of such things that will change your business forever? Because imagine this is, if you're going to think of only Uganda, you can never hit this number of users. Even if 10% only of these users, maybe even 1% bought on your platform, that's almost equal to everyone who's online in Uganda. And so, I want to just urge all of us, as I close, right? How are we thinking about the things that are not being done in this market? We are many people in this room doing amazing things, almost in silos. The conversations are there, and I'm part of some of them, but they're not yet at the level where we go beyond what's possible today. How do we think and how do we guide the rest of the world? Because M-Pesa, MTN mobile money, these are things that have not been done before in the world. How do we then create the next big thing? Because the payments infrastructure is just the start of what's possible in the ecosystem. I thank you, and I wish you a lovely day.
Thank you very much for that. Please, let's add him another round of applause. All right, okay. We just have one more panel to actually come to our conclusion, but of course the exhibitions are still going on. You will have also an opportunity one more time to go through the different tables and then check out what they actually have for you. But I want to go real fast and, of course, read for you all the exhibitors and the companies that have been part of these 40 days, 40 FinTechs. But, of course, I want to give away some rice from Green Shares. And, of course, this rice is proudly sponsored by the Lord Mayor, Innocent. So who deserves this? I have 2 of these. And I also have shea butter. Who deserves? I want to award someone who deserves it. Eh? Okay, thank you very. Please come and pick it. Just come and pick it. Please, let's clap for her. She deserves it. Another one. And how will you cook it, my brother? I don't see a ring on you. You're going to suffer with these things. The line of gentlemen here. Now, you give this gentleman here in white. That one there, yes. So, now, that shea butter, the other lady right there. Please, let's clap for them. Thank you very much, Innocent Kawoya, for that. And, of course, Green Shares, thank you very much for the innovations. Anyways, I want to read real quick the companies that are part of us today. We have Malan Company Limited, Sente, we have Paybu Limited, Bionic, we have T-Tech, Computing Palace Technologies, Trade Lance Limited, Flutterwave Inc., Jumia Uganda, Payclyde, we have Ugamat Limited, Everland Agritech Limited, Enabling Finance Limited, Safe Border, Jumo World Uganda. We have also Paytota. We have Green Shares Limited for, of course, the beautiful rice as well. And also we have Bullet Day Financial Services. We have merchandiseuganda.com. We have Alptech ICT Solutions. We have Kuzimba Services. We have Kanzu Code Limited. We have PesaJet. We have Ratio Data Center. We have Chap Africa. We have Enimiro Online. We have YTIB Capital Limited. We have Kai Saber, Jesus Technologies. We have Club Tangaza. We have Insure Small. We have Pegasus Technologies Limited. We have Zuldine. We have Numida Technologies, Yo Uganda Limited, SoftPay, MTN Mobile Money Uganda, Silicon Savannah Limited, CardPesa, Easier Greek. We have Airtel Money. We have FutureLink Technologies and NCBA Bank Uganda Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, for our next panel, Mr. Nicholas.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, good afternoon once again. This is our third and actually the last panel. It will be focused on readiness for CBDs. CBDs can be called central bank digital currencies. What is the first way to achieve a cash-lit and later a cashless economy? To join me on this panel, we have Vincent Tumwijuke, the CEO of FutureLink Technologies. You're welcome, sir. We also have Primera Muthoni, who's an ICT product development specialist. You can call her expert. You're welcome, Prim, on the panel. We have Mr. Anthony Indegwa, who is the CEO of NCBA Bank. We also have Mr. Tim Jameson, who is the Vice President of Payments and Financial Services at Safe Border, Africa. And lastly, we have Damari Sali, who is the author of a publicized book and a very important entrepreneurial book called Ideation Corner. Thank you very much. Without wasting a lot of time, we shall start with my panel introducing what they do and who they are. Because we are constrained by time, we have about 35-40 minutes. I'll give each one of you 30 seconds to give a pitch about yourself and about what you do. A pitch that is at a UN conference. So do your best in 30 seconds. We'll start with Tim.
Thank you very much. So my name is Tim Jameson. I'm the VP of Finance, Financial Services and Payments at SafeBoda. In a nutshell, I look after everything that's not on a Boda at SafeBoda. So I'm responsible for building our FinTech platform, payments ecosystem, our relationship with our vendors, and ensuring that, as we continue to grow our customer base, we're offering them more interesting, more impactful, and more valuable services through our super app.
Thank you. Anthony?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Nicholas. My name is Anthony Ndegwa. I am the Managing Director of NCBA Bank Uganda Limited. NCBA Bank Uganda Limited is a bank that is a Ugandan bank. It was formed about 18 months ago after a merger of two Ugandan banks. This is the first successful merger in Uganda. The first bank that we merged with was NC Bank Uganda Limited and Commercial Bank of Africa Uganda Limited. These two organizations had been in business in Uganda for more than 5 years. So again, we borrow into their heritage. As a bank, we offer the full spectrum of banking solutions in Uganda. We actually have a traditional bank which offers the usual corporate banking, retail banking solutions, private banking, trade and treasury solutions. And all our products are actually offered on our online and our mobile banking solutions. Beyond that, we are also an innovator. We are actually in partnership with MTN, and we continue to provide the MoCash solution, which currently has 9.7 million Uganda customers. Now, this success is on the back of our regional head office, where we also have similar products in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Rwanda, and also in Ivory Coast. So the latest one is in Ivory Coast. So again, similar solution like MoCash, and MoCash is a very simple solution. We're offering our customers, MTN customers, an ability to save money or borrow money on their phone.
Thank you very much. Yes, Vincent, tell us.
Yes, FutureLink Technologies is a banking as a service fintech that leverages the relevance of and outreach of circles and microfinance institutions in Eastern Africa to promote and enhance the financial resilience of low and medium income earners using digital channels. So we enable these same subscribers to grow personal savings, access affordable credit provided by the different partner circles, and make payments.
Thank you. Prim.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the HiPipo team for organizing this. My name is Primera Moloni, and I'm a product development specialist. That means I support the design of products so that they are very customer-centric. Do a lot of research to be able to make sure that the products that come to you, whether on USSD or on app, on web, are done very well, and they can attract the uptake, and you can get the customers you're actually looking for. Thank you.
All right, Damali Sali.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Damali Sali, and I am the founder and the author of the Ideation Corner. The Ideation Corner is a company that showcases innovators like yourself to tell your story, because no one seems to be doing that, but from the African context. I do not want to see you on BBC Fast or BBC Africa Fast or CNN Fast. I feel like I should be telling your story fast, because I'll tell it from our context, and it will be to inspire others, other Africans, other Ugandans to actually do the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now that we know we have 5 CEOs in front here, let us now dive deep into real business. I'll start off with you, Damali. Why do people like cash a lot? Why is it that everyone wants to have their money at their homes? I mean, when I say everyone, I mean most of us. Statistics show that 80% of business in Uganda is cash. On a about 90 is cash. It's already that is cashless. So I want to know, why is it that people like cash, not e-money?
Right. I think it starts off with general human nature. Generally, as people, we like something we can see, something we can touch. We trust that more than, something that is, arbitrary or virtual. So I think it starts off with human nature. But the other thing is, I feel that we need to do more of is also to get people to trust e-money, to trust virtual money. And the way we get to do that is to make sure that the systems we develop are inclusive. So if you develop a system that someone can't necessarily access if they don't have a smartphone, then that's a system that they will never trust because they don't have access to it. So we need to make sure that the systems we develop are accessible and they are easy to use and they are inclusive so that people can then trust to use the virtual money. And then I think the other thing which was touched by the other panel is it's expensive. If only 20% of the people in the Ugandan economy are using e-cash, then it means the other 80% that I may have to interact with need cash. So what's the point of me having electronic cash if I can't transact with 80% of the people I'm going to interact with? So in a way we need to work on making sure that the vast majority of people are using electronic money to be able to do it. In a way it's a chicken and egg. How do you get them then to get to electronic money?
Thank you. Vincent, I know you have been dealing with circles for about 2 decades, 17 years to be specific, in the villages down there. Why do you think people are strong with having their money under their mattresses, not on their phones?
I think that you'd look at, in my opinion, 2 drivers. One is that that's what they have. We are coming from a background where it has been dominated by cash. And so it's still a transition. But when you look at the lives of the people, congregation is a sort of social capital to these people. So much so that even when you present an alternative to do mobile transactions, if you take away congregation, you are taking away their social capital because they want to get together. You are talking about people coming together in a group on a particular banking day to just do transactions. So it's a social capital. But lastly, generally, beyond even the rural population, our supply chains are still really underdeveloped. And as long as people still have to walk to the market to buy, they will most likely go with cash. And so I think that the conversation has to look into the digitization of the livelihood of the people so that then people can feel that they can be served remotely. That way, you will keep them in their homes.
Okay. Thank you, Vincent. Yes, Tim, I know for sure you have a huge number of riders. And in all our engagements, I'm a fan of borders. Whenever you make a safe border order, the guy on the other side will call you and ask you, is it cash or cashless? Whenever you say it is cash, they will say, cancel the trip. So Tim, please tell us, why should your riders go cashless? Why must they not have their money in their hands?
I mean, I think it goes really to the heart of the problem. I think this issue that we've had, so particularly post-pandemic, of our drivers strongly preferring cash, I think is just a microcosm for consumers everywhere, which is like what is the value proposition of cashless over cash? If we, from a security perspective, if we have more trust in cash because of historical context, what is the value proposition for going cashless? And so I think where we've seen adoption in other economies and where we've seen a shift to digitization of currency is because there is a value proposition. And so, like, I work in a consumer brand, so for us it's about how do we reward a consumer for changing their fundamental behavior. And I think there's going to be kind of large sort of demographic and geographical reasons. Like, I think the work that we do trying to encourage our drivers to take cashless trips and for our consumers to use the Safe Boda wallet is very different to conversations, outside kind of central Kampala. And I think, all of these sort of come together really into the same question, which is like, what is the value proposition of cashless at the moment. And so that, that's sort of, my role and other leaders in the FinTech, sphere's role is, how do we reward a consumer for changing their fundamental behavior?
Thank you, Tim. Now that we know there is a historical perspective to cash, there are issues about the propositions. Prim, there you are a developer. When you are developing these products that are making us leave our money and entrust it to your systems, what do you look at that will push me from giving you the cash? What proposition do you put in place for people to drop cash and go cashless? The speaker.
Thank you so much for the question, and I would like to agree with him. Usually it's about the proposition first. Even before we start developing the product, is what are we giving the customer to begin with, and are there good incentives for them to be able to take up the product? Then if there are good incentives, first we start with that conceptualization. For example, let me talk about something maybe like more cash. Is the value proposition, is it a good proposition? Does it fit the customer segment? Have we done enough research to understand if how big that market segment is? We have agreed the market segment is big enough. We have agreed we have the customers to begin with. And then now we can go back now to the design of the solution and being able to design it before even we send it to the developers. The idea of safe border, there's someone who started with it and said, how did you know that you would actually, how did they come up with the idea and say, you know what, as much as there's a border downstairs, what interest do I have to be able to order for it on a mobile phone? And me as a person, before then, I actually barely used borders until Safe Border showed up, and I'm thinking, okay, now that I can order border, it builds confidence on my side. Okay, if I can order border for someone who is already registered, someone knows, then I'm more interested in actually taking on such a product. So usually it begins with research. Do we know the customer segment? Do we understand the problem very well? And are there going to be people to take up the product? Is the market large enough? Then we start developing.
Sure, thank you. Anthony, from a bank perspective, I know for sure NCBA, for the record, is the biggest bank in Uganda in terms of account holders. 9.7 million read on Mocash. That makes them the biggest bank. And the next one doesn't have half that number. But I also know for the fact that even from those very many customers, majority of them are borrowing and taking cash. A small number of them is actually saving. So again, still, even when they are doing more cash, which is digital, they later convert to cash. From a bank perspective, why do you always want to withdraw money? Why do you think you always want to withdraw money?
Thank you, Nicholas, for that question. I think it's what we know. And I like the presenter who came before, Flutterwave, he says, we know what we know. And I think as developers, as integrators, as bankers, I think we need to take our customers to the next level. What's the next level? Can we look at solving the next problem? And I think that's our main objective. But I think there is a huge reliance on cash in this particular market. In other words, it's about acceptability. So when I get my More Cash loan today, because More Cash loan, you get it on your phone, all right? We should be able then to have an infrastructure that allows our customers, either through knowledge, products offering, acceptability by other vendors and merchants, so that this client doesn't need to withdraw it into cash, and then they can actually spend it. So I think the first thing is we have a journey around financial literacy and customer knowledge. I think the second journey I'm looking at is building bank and digital infrastructure to allow this journey to happen. All right? We also need, as merchants, to publicize the safety, don't you put it well, the safety of our products. Because there's a whole customer base out there looking for safety. All right? I think the other point is around cyber security. So when the guy gets a More Cash loan, he says, you know what, I want it in cash. I don't believe it's money until I see it. You remember recently, the government actually issued out money to the vulnerable population. Now, do you know what happened? That money came through the digital platforms. I think majority of that was actually withdrawn immediately. All right? But if we are trying to grow our, I would say, e-commerce, I think we should try and encourage our customers to be able to not withdraw, but however use it. Again, I think there are a lot of challenges across the country around accessibility, agents, points of sale. I think there's a lot of conversation around that. But I think just to close, I would say, I think we are holding on to what we know. We're holding on to the fact that when I have a heap of cash next to me, I'm okay. As opposed to, I can actually put it in a more cash account. More cash also allows you to save. More cash today allows you to save. So you can actually get your loan, put it on the saving side, and then use it as and when you need it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicholas.
Makes sense. Now that we know the issues around we are wanting our cash versus having e-money, we know for the fact internationally, Western countries have moved this journey and adopted cashless solutions. Then I want to hear from you. Picking global examples, how do you think Western countries were able to drop cash and went cashless? What exactly they do?
I think they made the process accessible to all. So they made it very cheap for you to be, virtually costless for you to use e-money, for you to go digital. And in so doing, they worked with the private players to make sure that the solutions that they develop, in some way they incentivize to ensure that people will be able to use them at a little or no cost. That was key. But then also there was a lot of internet penetration, and so it was easy for people to then access these systems if it was in back systems. So that also enabled that. The other thing that I feel also we need to do is to see that government is the largest consumer, by the way, of goods and services in any country. So when a government does in fact adopt its consumption to digital only, everyone in a way will be forced to actually go digital. So the governments also had that push, and they made sure that in their consumption of goods and services, they were all electronic and they weren't accepting cash in any way. And that organically actually pushed digital payments and digital transactions in an economy.
Sure, thank you. I see everything rotates around things that need to be done. Now I want to know whether these things are being done. I'm beginning with Tim, from your organization. Are you putting in place the right propositions to make sure that people drop cash? I want clear examples of why your rider must allow cashless, not receive his 5K in his hands.
I think there's maybe just a more interesting place to start, which is, do we really think that mobile money is cashless? I mean, for every shilling that's spent on mobile money, it's been on the whole deposited as cash with an agent. So I think when we think of the ecosystem here versus the West, it's very different. They didn't start from a place where you had wide-scale adoption of mobile money. There was the banks remained the dominant player, and FinTech slotted in. And so I think for Uganda and lots of Africa, it's a slightly different challenge, which is, for the consumer, do they have kind of use cases to spend kind of cashless on when they've got it? And for us, that's how we're building our ecosystem. We're building an app that's based on cashless. For merchants, particularly around Kampala, do they accept easily kind of cashless? And third, and I think a fantastic point about the government, what regulation or what steer and what example is being set by government to try and force this change from kind of cash to cash light or to cashless? So thinking kind of all the FinTechs we've heard from Flutterwave right the way down to the smallest, everyone's looking at the same issues, which is, how do we transfer cash in a better way? Is it more secure? What's the use case? But for us, it's different to the more developed economies, because we're not, mobile money is not cashless.
Maybe Tim, just to interject, I need a few examples of how self-border is giving people value to drop cash and go cashless. Why a vendor who's on your e-commerce platform should actually accept e-money, not receive her money in cash?
Yeah, so I think it's about use cases. So my job and what we're trying to build over the next 12 months is, as we gain our MPS license from the Bank of Uganda, hopefully very shortly, we are going to be opening up a further cashless ecosystem, both in the forms of working capital loans with our partner Namida, Obviously, all of the usual use cases around bill payment, savings, products, agents through the app to try and give customers a very convenient, central app that they can do everything on. From ordering a ride to work in the morning, to ordering food from the market, to buying airtime, to paying your bills, savings products. All of that will be offered through one single app. And so our proposition is around convenience, and also then how we motivate people through value proposition, so rewards for using our products.
Thank you. If I got you well, I think you are saying Safe Border is expanding its proposition from just a rider to e-commerce to loans to saving, among others, so that your people gain value from being on the app. Thank you. Vincent, in your organization, what exactly are you doing? I know you have over 300 circles you are supporting. You are serving more than 1 million people, and I'm being very conservative. The numbers are much higher. What exactly are you doing to ensure that people have trust in money, not cash?
Thank you for that question. I think that the most responsive effort would be to look at the entire ecosystem, and rather than just one node of the ecosystem. So our approach is that we de-risk the institution itself first and foremost. We de-risk the institution as a motivation for them to actually digitize. And so on our banking as a service platform, we have been able to reduce the cost of infrastructure, the monthly infrastructure, from about $200 to around $18 per month. That is a motivation for the institution to accept digital channels. On this other side, for the consumer, they are interested not just in convenience, because convenience, but expensive convenience is still a luxury for the ordinary people we serve, because no one has ever told them what their hour is worth. So we move ahead to discuss with our partner circles to offer digital financial services that are affordable. So with the risked environment, you are able to have financial service providers offer credit, cheaper credit, to a de-risked customer. So we are saying this customer has been paying digitally. You have all the records. Why do you still have to offer them credit so expensively? So the end consumer comes because there is affordable credit. The institution accepts digital payments because they are de-risked and they save on the infrastructure. But more importantly, I think that the discussion needs to go further than just looking at money, but go further to look at how the money is made. When I drive past Kalewe and you meet this young man holding 6 pineapples, and they are selling the 6 pineapples at 10,000, it just speaks volumes at how much we still have to do. Because if we have digital channels, if we are talking about FinTechs getting any credit, if we have to claim any credit, we must begin from there so that we de-risk the end consumer, enhance the financial resilience of the end consumer. Then they will be willing, first of all, to pay cashless, and the one they pay will be able to accept the digital payment.
Thank you. I hear you. Now let's talk regulation. Of course, we know the FinTech industry has a new regulation in place, among other things. Prim, I want to know from you, is there enough regulation to help people transit to cashless? And does this regulation protect me if I go cashless? Because if I put money on your platform, I'm translating to cashless. But what if my money disappears? Who's there for me?
Thank you so much. I am not quite sure I can answer that question exhaustively, but I will do my very best. It should have gone to the other team with the lawyer. And so I'm going to say that right now we are what we call trying to define as we go. When we started with mobile money, when we started with a couple of years back, we didn't even think that we could go in the era of digital currencies, the first response from the government was, what's that? And we have reached a point where countries in Africa are actually doing research and are willing actually to go ahead and create such currencies. So let's say we are doing it when we get there, to get that point. So if we see a new issue, let's say maybe something like cybersecurity, we don't even have enough people in this country to support the FinTechs that we have on cybersecurity. We have to look outward to be able to get that support. When you look at regulation, I sit a lot with lawyers today to help them understand the telco ecosystem. Because even them, as they try to do regulation, they need to understand it very well. So Engineer Primera has to sit with a lawyer who has no idea about our ecosystem and have to teach them from scratch how the money is moving, what kind of records we are keeping on the network, how do they look like, what is the implication. So if we are going to be able to get the regulation there, but it's going to take time because the e-payments are creating a level of transparency we have not seen before in the payments ecosystem. So it requires a lot of partnerships for all of us to be able to be transparent, to be able to see, by the way, when money moves from here to there, that's how it looks like. From the bank to an e-wallet to converting it to a cryptocurrency, this is how it all looks like. Then together with the very amazing lawyers in this country that have taken interest, we can be able to build regulation and the government. But it has to be one area at a time and in a very collective kind of way. Because it's not all the people, all the players do not know the implications end to end. I cannot even be able to explain in 5 years where we should be or we can be in terms of regulation. So 1 year at a time, and we see what all the players require and what helps, and also in creating that regulation, we are not undermining some of the fintech, some of the startups. They also have a way to thrive. We're not only looking at the big players in the system, but we are going to cut across everybody and be very, what the word is, kind in terms of regulation. Yeah.
Thank you, Prim. Yes, you have actually competently answered the question.
Thank you.
You are underestimating yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anthony, please tell me, there is a part of the question that Prim didn't answer. Let us assume we are pushing for cashless and people are depositing money in NCBA. There are scenarios of I deposited money and later I didn't find my money. Next time I will not deposit money. So what I'm asking is very simple. Is the regulation that is already in place strong enough to push for cashless? And also, does that same regulation safeguard me who's going cashless? Because it might only be safeguarding the bank. And I will not put my money anyway if it is safeguarding the bank.
Thank you very much, Nicholas, for that question. Now, I think the beauty for us at NCBA Bank Uganda Limited is that we are actually regulated by the Bank of Uganda, and all the deposits that we hold are also, they are also secured by the Deposit Protection Fund. So I think that's a first step. It means that when you bring your money to our bank, there is recourse on us. We have a responsibility as a bank to ensure that we protect the consumer. So the consumer is protected. And I think that's the beauty of dealing with an institution like ourselves, NCBA. So when you look at our customer base, the Mocash customers, when they save money, all right, let's even deal with the customer, the agriculture, the farmer up country who is actually saving their hard-earned money. This money is protected. And I think that's what we need to continuously educate and remind our customers, that the money is regulated, it's protected. We are a regulated institution. It means that from a regulation perspective today, as a bank, I'm fully regulated. I think we then need to go beyond that and say, now, beyond the banks, what's the regulation? All right? And I think that's I would say, the broader conversation here. But I think today, what we are seeing in the country is that if you are a fintech like NCBA, who is then pushing out a product like Mocash, which allows our customers to borrow and also to save, and we are regulated, I think for me, the law is actually protecting the consumer, and it is pushing us towards inclusivity, financial inclusion, innovation, and the BOU. And actually, I can actually confirm that Bank of Uganda is particularly concerned and particularly following through on our innovations. Thank you.
Thank you. As we wind up, I want to pick your minds on something called CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. And I think someone mentioned it as a way of pushing for cashless. In your opinion, each one of you, do you think CBDs, central bank digital currencies, will be the faster route to achieving a cashless economy? Or we shall go faster without even CBDs? I'll start with Tim.
I think in terms of speed, it's hard to say. I mean, I think a lot of what they try to achieve, which is around consumer protection, given they're on blockchain, government control of money supply, financial inclusion, because you don't require a bank account to send money between two people or mobile money account. I think a lot of the intentions behind them are really noble, and when we think of the reasons that we want economies to be cashless, I think they solve a lot of the problems. I think sitting here in 2021, we haven't seen a single example of a government launch one yet, and I'm always quite sceptical of government's ability to deliver mass tech scale innovation, which is, as we've seen from forever, that is normally driven by the private sector. I think the intentions are noble, and as a consumer, there's lots of reasons to be super excited about them. I think it's very unlikely that they will be, in my opinion, they will be the forefront of cashless economies really anywhere, and probably definitely not in Africa.
Thank you. Vincent. CBDCs.
Yeah, so I think that there is sufficient evidence that we are gaining ground in terms of even the advent of COVID to drive this particular effort of the central bank digital currencies. And the central banks in Africa have also interest in actually promoting this because of the advent of digital currencies, other digital currencies, which of course present regulatory challenges for them. So it's in their interest to push the CBDCs, and as a policy, if you also look at the challenges of the digital currencies compared to the CBDCs, these central bank digital currencies are backed up by monetary policies, which offer some bit of relative stability as compared to the other ones. So I think that we're going to see more advance, and with the supportive regulatory framework to advance the fintech industry, if we have more automated supply chains, if we have more automated agricultural value chains where the people are, we should be able to see quite a phenomenal change, very soon. Thank you.
Let me hear from Anthony. I'll come back after.
Yes. Thank you, Nicholas. Now, central bank CBDCs are simply electronic money. It's just electronic money. Today, what the Bank of Uganda does is it issues physical money. So, CBDCs is just the same money, but in an electronic form. That's what it is. Very simple. Now, it's a fantastic initiative because you are now digitizing the whole value chain and the currency. Of course, for this to succeed, you need to have usability. So, for example, the central banks issue the digital money. I need to think about my farmer. You talked about the gentleman selling pineapples. That gentleman selling pineapples for 10,000 shillings, can he receive it? It's the same thing, because look at the transaction. Look at the transaction with pineapples. The guy has his pineapples. Say, well, yeah, you agree 10,000. He actually goes round your car. He arranges it properly, and you give him the money. Why can't we digitize that? You know what I mean? And really, that's what we're saying, is that we then have this universal currency that's available for all, not just to receive, but also to pay. And then it goes back to the other question, Nicholas, you talked about. When they receive this digital currency, will they encash it, or will they continue with the transaction? And I think that's the conversation around moving into cashless. So cashless should allow us to have an environment where you have end-to-end usability, end-to-end acceptability, end-to-end, can I say, points where customers can be able to use the digital money. All right, so I would recommend, I think this is a significant move for central banks. I don't think any central bank has actually, I'm not sure about that, but I think it's a significant move. And all it just is doing is just digitizing the physical cash, what we know as physical cash today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
CBDC is the fastest route to going cashless because they will come from government.
With Damali, what she said earlier, that the government is one of the biggest factor that is going to really be at the forefront of moving to cashless and cashless. So there is enough research done, there is enough motivation for government to be able to go the digital currency route. So it will actually affect a lot. As she said, that they are also the biggest consumers, they are the biggest in terms of procurement systems, in terms of consumption, dispersing money like we saw recently, they have to use digital means. Now, in our country, they had to depend on the telcos to be able to disperse. What if themselves they had the capability to do it? First of all, it builds a lot of trust. So as a telco, as a small company trying to build digital products, and you find that the government is also building digital products, it creates a lot of safe space. Okay, now we can actually do this. We can actually go into digital money. I can be able to trust the person in the camp selling 2 pineapples to be able to pay me and to be able to make the right payments. That's one of them. But there's also a lot of risk in terms of cybersecurity, a lot of research that needs to go into it. And then also, apart from that, there is also a lot of risk in terms of all the other players. Okay, so I'm a small fintech, I'm a bank. What does that exactly mean to the banks if I am also creating my own currency? Because basically you're cutting out the banks. What is it going to be in them forms? Again, we go back to the frameworks and to the regulation. How are we going to be able to regulate so that all the players in the system are also benefiting in terms of it? Kenya is in research status. Nigeria and South Africa are already in development of some sort in terms of this area. At least those 3 countries in Africa are trying to do something. China, we've seen, Sweden, the Philippines, all those countries are in way higher in terms of research and development and trying to test it out. But there's still a lot in terms of the regulatory frameworks, like here in Uganda, in Africa, in terms of making sure that everybody in the ecosystem benefits.
Thank you, Prem. Now, as we conclude this panel, I'm going to request Damali Sali not to repeat what you have said, but to help me summarize what exactly this panel discussion has been about in a language that the majority of us understand. I'm giving her 2 minutes to summarize this panel in Luganda. I believe she's the most competent up here to summarize the panel in Luganda for our viewers across the country. Because the session is live on BBS, which is available on all pay TV platforms in Uganda and in some parts of Africa, so it is being viewed everywhere. In 2 minutes, Daman, what have you people been talking about? And how does it help an informal person in my village in Yendo Masaka?
Basebo ne banyabo tubadde tuteesa kwongeri gye tusobola okulaba nti abantu abasinga batandika okwettanira ssente ze bayita eza digital, katugambe mobile money, ne balekera okukozesa ssente ez'olupapula. Bingi nnyo bye tuteesezaako ku lwaki abantu balina okuva ku ssente ez'olupapula ne badda ku za digital. Ebimu ku byo kwe kuba nti no ssente ez'olupapula omuntu asobola ozikubbako, essente ez'olupapula oba olina muwala wo e Masaka ng'oli Kampala n'alwala, tosobola muweereza ssente za lupapula, olina muweereza ssente za mobile money. Naye nga beebuuza lwaki wadde waliwo ebirungi bingi ebiri ku kukozesa ssente za mobile money, lwaki abantu tebeettanidde ssente ze bayita eza digito eza mobile money? Ebimu ku byo bye bagambye nti lwakubanga abantu tebeesiga mobile money. Ekirala, oyinza okuba n'essente z'oku mobile money n'oyagala okugula obutungulu wali, gwogolako obutungulu n'agamba nedda nnyabo nze njagala ki za lupapula. So weesanga okuba nti nebintu by'osinga okugula abantu abasinga tebaagala za lupapula, ne weesanga nga okuba n'esente zo ku mobile money tekikuyamba lwakubanga abasinga baagala za mpapula. Kati ne twebuuza nti kiki kye tulina okukola okulaba nti abantu batandika okwettanira sente zino eza mobile money, lwakubanga birungi nnyo ebizirimu. Osobola okwewala sente kasita obeera ne sente za mobile money. Bano bozitereka nabo babeera bamanyi nti noono Damalisali buli wiiki akozesa emitwalo 10 ziyita ku mobile money. Kitegeeza nti osobola muwola emitwalo 2 ne mugamba alina ozisasula mu myezi 6. Kati bwe mbadde Damalisali sikozesa mobile money teri asobola kumanya ekyo era tewali agenda kumpola sente. Ebirala balina bingi nnyo bye bakozesa ku mobile money, basobola okukuleetera ebyamaguzi, ebyentambula, basobola okuwa ebintu by'osobola okukozesa mu byobulimi. So bingi nnyo by'osubwa bw'obeera toli ku mobile money. Naye ng'ate nabanno balina okukola ekyamanyi okulaba nti no naawe ali ku mobile money ate tekikukosa nnyo, emisoso gye bakuggyako si mingi, osobole omukozesa. Era beeyamye nti no bagenda kusigala nga bakirowoozaako engeri okukendeeza emisoso gye bakuggyako abantu abasinga basobola okukozesa mobile money lwakubanga bwe tunatandika ensi ezisinza okukulaakulana zonna zigenze digital, sente gye zikozesa za digital, okanga kikuyamba mu by'okusuubula, mu by'okugula, kitambuza ebintu mangu. So okwejja mu bwavu tulina naffe okukola ekyo, naye nga bagambye nti bo abayiiya ba technology ono ne gavumenti balina okukwataganira wamu, because abayiiya bokka tebasobola kikola ate ne gavumenti yokka tesobola kikola. So balina okukwataganira wamu okulaba nti no bonna bakwataganira wamu okulaba nti n'abantu batandika okwettanira sente ze bayita eza digital oba eza mobile money. Mwebale nnyo.
Thank you very much. And now with that detailed summary, I want to add a lot to it. I'm going to request my dear panelists to go for a photo moment, but Damali will be retained here for a moment. Again, before they leave, like my brothers from Kenya, called South Soul say, short and sweet. The panels are brief, straight to the point, and they are delivering the point. The impact we intend to create is being created. Because they always say you don't need a full day to make a point. You have 5 minutes, Anthony has said everything. Whoever was here knows NCBA is the biggest bank, and it continues innovating. In the same space, team has used 5-6 minutes, and everyone knows that he's working on saving and loans products for his customers. So people on SafeBoard are excited on the new thing that is happening. Thank you very much. I'll ask my panelists to go outside for a photo moment. Damalisa will remain here briefly. Thank you. Yes, to those watching us on NBS, on BBS, very sorry about that. This is the FinTech Landscape Exhibition organized by HiPipo and partners, Mojaloop, Crosslake Tech, ModusBox, and Level 1 Project. I'm going to take this opportunity to hand over to Wesley to take us through the next action.
Well, the next action is very simple. We want to make sure we get to lunch as early as possible, so this will really be quite a little bit quick. We're going to be awarding, giving certificates to all the participants, but most importantly also as well, those that actually went through the entire training, all right? There are those that went through the training, so those will definitely be awarded as well. So we're going to do that real quick, chop, and I'll request Damali Sali to come here so that we can award these amazing participants as well. Real quick. So I'll have, so when I read your name, I read the other, you pick it from Damali. I'll start with the Award of Excellence, 40 Days, 40 FinTechs, NCBA Bank, Uganda, please, Uganda Limited, please move forward and pick it. NCBA Bank, Uganda Limited. We'll have it handed over to you by Damali. Pegasus. Pegasus Technologies Limited. Who's taking the photos, please? Pegasus. Card Pesa. In the queue, please. Thank you. Raxio Data Center.
Omukolo ogaba naffe abali mu nteekateeka ey'okulaba engeri tekinologiya mu byensimbi gyagenze akyukakyukamu ate n'okutunuulira wa gyalaga. Olunaku olwaleero wabaddewo bannaffe bangi abazze ne bakubaganya ebirowoozo naye nga naddala batunuulidde ensonga eziwerako okuli ensonga y'okulaba ensuubulagana bw'eyinza okubeera naddala singa tukozesa tekinologiya ono era mu ngeri y'emu ne batunuulira abo bannaffe abatunda ebintu wamu n'okugula era engeri gye bakozesaamu enteekateeka eno okwonnonga kw'ossa n'okusindika ensimbi okuva ku kifo ekimu okuzitwala ku kifo ekirala era mu ngeri y'emu batunuulidde oba oliawo n'amateeka engeri gye gatunuuliddemu enteekateeka eno naddala nga batunuulira act egenda okuba nga etunuulira ensimbi engeri gye ziva mu mukono ogumu ogenda mu mukono omulala nga tukozesa enkola eno eya digito. Okusoomozebwa kwe kuli nti waliwo bantu baffe bangi abali mu bifo ewala eri oba oliawo intaneti nga tetuukayo bulungi oba oliawo era nga tebalina okukkiriza nti enkola eno esobola okuba nga ekozesebwa ate neeyamba. Tutunuulidde nti gye bujja maaso eyo ensimbi zino enkalu ziyinza okukendeera naddala nga tezikozesebwa mu basinga obungi kuba amawanga mangi kati agagenze digito. Okusomozebwa weekuli neera bagambye nti n'omukisa weeguli ogw'amaanyi naddala bannaffe abagenda maaso n'okuteekawo enteekateeka zino oba naddala mu kuteekawo enkola gy'oyinza okugamba nti babuildinze platforms ez'enjawulo ezisobola okukozesebwa mu nteekateeka eno. Terefayina nga bweyeeyama okusigala nga ekolagana naawe naddala okutuusaako ebikulu oba ebiyamba nsobola okusigala nga bitambula nabwe kino olunaku olwaleero tubadde nga tukutuusaako enteekateeka eyo. Tukusuubiza tujja kwongera okutuusaako bingi bigenda maaso naddala mu nteekateeka zino ez'ebyensimbi naye nga tukugamba nti olunaku olwaleero bwe tutugenze tusaba osigale ng'olaba Terefayina eyaffe tugenda butereevu ate mu pulogulaamu zaffe endala eziriko. Mbadde Morris Mukibe Mugave ayi Katonda akuuma maaso mogi.